hold it a little bit. There you go.
Okay.
Does it matter what number the button's on?
That's
William, Josh, does it matter what number the button's on?
unless we take a break.
Okay, beautiful. Call the regular board meeting to order here at 6:05. Thank you all for joining us. Guests, if you could please sign in next to Marco here. I don't see any purple sheets filled out for public comment, but that's where they are as well. Thanks for joining us. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And ready for roll call.
Dr. Breckenridge Pettit is not here tonight. Dr. Hill.
Here.
Mr. Hobbs.
Here.
Mrs. Maddox.
Here.
Mrs. Pascal.
Here.
Ms. Strickman.
Here.
And Mr. Smith.
Here. Jumping into board member comments.
I have one, but I just need a moment. If someone else has one, they can go first.
Okay.
I don't want to talk about it.
I was just going to say, like Andrea Moore highlighted in her board report, that she was speaking at the Guidestone dinner, and Jen and I were actually there. So we got to hear her talk. She did a great job.
Good deal.
Sure, be ready.
You have to hit your mics, remember.
Did you want this?
Yeah, hit your mic. Don't forget that aspect. Jen, are you ready, or do you want somebody else?
Right. I'm so close to being ready. Like one breath.
So I think it's really a great turf that we have. It's nice and bouncy, and even though we had some injuries in the last, couple of games, I think it will be very beneficial to the community. And thank you to Andre and the marching band, who are working very diligently to have some entertainment on the halftime show. So that was really nice to see.
Carrie's gonna love this. Carrie has been a part of many district successes, you guys, bringing Colorado Mountain College to our community, implementing mental health /SEL strategies for our students, managing in-person instruction throughout the pandemic. She's a nurse. I'm just reading it all. Financing the largest teacher pay raise in our district's history. However, it is Carrie's caring that stands out. Confirming safe protocols during COVID, working as a kitchen dishwasher to keep our buildings open, insisting on mental health support for our most vulnerable students. Her proudest accomplishments include sustaining during COVID, improving staff pay, and supporting our 2 alternative schools. Our district is stronger because of Carrie, and so I would like to present her with this McGuffey Award on behalf of Casby. Oh, thank you. Also,
I love it. Oh, thank you.
thank you, Carrie.
Did not expect that.
That was a whole thing at our Casby regional meeting last week. So, yeah.
We can go
Stick that on your
Pause
back.
your picture.
Thank you.
And who would you
I
like?
appreciate that.
Carrie, obviously. Who else do you want?
And I will-
Joe?
The
I have a
whole
little
thing.
letter. We'll do it on October, so I will cry. So I'm just gonna say it.
We're gonna pause and do the best we can for PR purposes. And take a photo. Yes, we're taking a picture.
Ooh.
If I would have known.
Full board.
You would have warned.
I wanted to.
Where's the best place?
You say the question comes.
Or you'd be like, I mean, this is a really nice background.
It's gorgeous.
I think we should, if we each stand underneath.
It's either here or the crest.
Oh, yeah, llamas. Good call, Ben.
The llamas?
What's that?
Good call, Ben.
What did you say?
Llamas? Oh, the stairs. Oh, the stairs are very good. Stairs. They're right here. I can work with that. It's very thing, but I don't know. Oh, no. I don't need to get that.
You are dead center with your award.
Yeah.
Oh, I probably need that.
Okay, careful of the fire.
All right, go ahead.
We will do it again. All right, gather around Carrie. You have to hold it. Carrie.
Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Thank you.
Dang it all. Okay, make sure double check your mic.
Okay. Thank you, Jen. Congratulations, Carrie. Anyone else?
Well, I just second all that. Carrie, I've been very impressed with your capacity, ability, and all the time that you put in. I've appreciated working with you.
Okay. Thank you. Move on to written messages from the board. Looks like we have one from Aaron that we all saw in our packets. Public comments, don't see any. So bear with me, folks. Here we go. Approval of the agenda with the following changes. Remove items 3G 1 through 5, A policies, AC, AC-E-1, AC-E-2, AC-R-1, AC-R-2 from review and approve. Clarify policy BG, school board policy process to be process in action. Item 5D, not consent. Remove items 3H4-6, school board member conduct policies from review and approve. Combine discussion items 4B and 4C, policies GCBC-N, CBCB-E, GBCB, which are CBT recommendations. Remove policy BDFB from review and approve, and add to action item 5FV, revoke first reading. Remove policy BEC from review and approve, and add consent item 3F III, first reading policy. Remove policy BEDB-E from review and approve, and add consent item 3E III to revoke. Table 3E KF-E-1, facilities use agreement until October. Table 3K UPK contracts for the Children's Discovery Ranch until October. And that is it. Please don't ask me to repeat it. Looking for a motion.
I will move to approve.
We got Carrie on motion. Second was them. Thank you.
Any comments, discussion?
David, do you want to just address
Yeah,
why we're
I will go ahead and address
Why
it. I
it's
know
so
there's a
big.
lot of changes. There's also a lot of policies here. So for the public to understand, one, with the collaborative bargaining team, we're going through a lot of those where G policies are personnel, and that's requiring us to do a lot of auditing of policies. And then the board, coming out of the pandemic, one of our priorities is to audit all of our policies, kind of A to Z, and go through and study each of those. And so we got through the policy A book. They're all labeled by alphabetical. So there's the A policies. And then the B book, we got through those. I appreciate Mandy and Jen helping confirm all the work, a lot of legal work there. So we were able to get through all of those policies. We listed them out on the agenda really for transparency to make sure we're being clear. The goal here is to get to the details and not in general sense. We're able to, anything we identified that needed truly to be addressed, move to action or a discussion item, right? And so those were all those different pieces, and there's just a lot of collision of different policies. So I think the main reason is just see that is going, oh, wait a minute, it's here listed twice. How do we make sure it's not listed twice and only one board action is taken so we don't get more than one process going to gain clarity? So it is more detailed work than we normally have to do, and it's taking a lot of time.
And if
That's important.
it is important, and if it hasn't been stated before, going through this policy audit to make sure all of our policies are appropriate, correct, and updated. So this will be a thing recurring throughout the year. So hopefully not that many changes, but there will be a lot of policy approvals and recommending reviews and things of that nature. So.
Dr. Hill for the agenda. Mr. Hobbs. Mrs. Maddox.
Aye.
Mrs. Pascal.
Aye.
Ms. Schickman.
Aye.
And Mr. Smith.
Okay, moving right into reports. Guest reports. Marco Hahn, Director of Activities Athletics, whatever your official title is. The floor is yours. Can we get a microphone out there to like help capture for those listening at home? Yeah. I've heard that was a
Hopefully I don't drop this. So first, just once again, thank you for having me be a guest speaker. I also want to finally I get to see you face to face. Thank you for approving the turf this past spring. If you haven't had a chance to go and be on it, please do so. I want it to be clear that this was not a turf replacement just so we can have a pretty looking field. While I will say it is a pretty looking field, as Carrie mentioned earlier, that field feels good. It's wonderful. It's so much safer, and bottom line, I'm proud of that field. And thank you for giving me a chance to be part of a capital project like that. A couple of things I wanted to throw in. I've submitted my board report, but there's a couple of things that I came up that I need to mention to you as well. Cross country, every year in recent years, they've traveled out of the state for a competition. This is a reward for those kids that participated in, they completed their 50 workouts during the summertime. And we actually have the largest number ever. I believe it's 21, 22 that will be traveling to Boise State, not Boise State, but Boise, Idaho, to compete in the cross country meet. I just need your approval for that activity. The funds are already raised for it. They did some fundraising this summer with a race this past July, and that will cover the cost of this travel. We just need approval from the board to allow for them to travel outside of Colorado. Something else that I wanted to add that wasn't in my board report. I can't say their names just because of privacy matters, but I want to just make it public. We have a cheerleader and a football player. Last year, to put it nicely, they really struggled as students last year. The football player, I do not remember one grade check that I didn't see his name. And then the young lady in cheerleading, she struggled academically, but not just academically, she was a behavior problem. Well, this year she's in cheerleading, and both of them, they are just giving all out effort with performing well in the classroom, academically and socially. And so I mentioned that because later on I'm going to talk about participation, the increase in numbers that we have right now. Good problem, not a bad problem. And the benefits of more kids participating. I promise you that young lady, if she wasn't in cheerleading, she wouldn't give the effort. She'd probably be academically ineligible right now or have D's and F's. So I just want to praise those students. So now to what I was planning on. Now that we're past Labor Day, we are rolling over at the high school. High school, middle school, we are rolling. We got so many activities going on. Not just things going on, we also have a lot of success that's happening. One of the things that our volleyball team, just looking at the improvement that they made from last year to this year. Unfortunately, last week we had a battle with Buena Vista. Last year, I'll be honest, BV handled us pretty well. This past Thursday, they went to 5 matches, went extra points as well. Unfortunately, we fell short at the end, and BV was able to end triumph. But besides that, our girls, they finished second at the Gunnison tournament. We defeated La Vida, who is a very tradition-rich program. I'm really proud of Christy and what she's doing with those young ladies. The participation numbers in the high school, we have 40. Oh, I apologize. High school and middle school combined in volleyball, we have 87 participants. Um, that is a. I'm sorry. A 31% increase from last year. Football, we're having success tying it back to our turf. We are undefeated on the new turf. The JV won a game last night. They won a game last night, 42-6. Our varsity team, up until the second half of last Friday's game, they didn't allow a score to happen on the field. But we're 2-0 with the varsity, 2-0 with the JV. Tomorrow, hopefully, our middle school will keep that streak going with a win over BV. So once again, thank you for the new turf. But with football, we have 75 participants between football and with football in middle school and high school, and that's a 28% increase from last year. Another sport that has increased significantly, boys golf. Tri-Peaks champions, FYI, they locked that in Thursday. They had 25 participants, which is a 31% increase from last year. So I'm giving you all those numbers and percentages just to let you know. I remember when I was hired, David charged me, get kids out, get kids participating. I'm not going to pretend like this was me making it all happen. We have some great coaches in great positions, building relationships with kids. It's just amazing to see what's happening with our sports right now. So I'm saying all of this with the increased numbers. This is a good problem. It's a problem, but it's a good problem. Do not view all of this participation as a negative thing. How can we help take away this good problem? With higher numbers of participants, there's going to be an increase in entry fees. There's a need for more uniforms. There's a need for more equipment. There's some more travel, things like that. Something that we would need help with in the future is an increase in budget. I'm not asking for this now, but just down the road, potentially next year, we need to start looking at higher numbers in terms of budget so we can make sure we provide for our kids. Once again, more participation does more kids motivated to perform well in the classroom. Problem 2. So for me, I would prefer not to have a cut policy. I just feel that way, that we're not going to benefit anyone by removing them from programs. What I would prefer to do is add programs. Now, on our boys' side, we're actually not in need of a situation because sports like football, baseball, track and field, soccer, what else? I'm sorry, wrestling. All of those are sports that the more bodies we have, the better. We're not like really looking for a situation where all these teams are so full, we need to find something for our boys. Right now, I'm more speaking in our girls' programs. Perfect example, volleyball. Volleyball, the uniqueness of volleyball is, one, you have limited spaces on the floor, 6 participants at a time. but you're also limited in terms of how you can sub. Basketball, sports like that, you can sub all day long, every second. Just keep subbing kids in all day long. Volleyball, there's a process of subbing. Once you sub someone in, they can only sub for each other. There, you can't just move kids all around, and so there's a lot of limits with volleyball. Also, with it being an indoor sport, there's just that limit of space. Right now, we have 40 something girls in the high school program. I'm anticipating 50 plus, possibly next year, and that's just high school. That's not including what's going on at the middle school. Middle school, we do have 50. We had to lock that door at 50 because there's only one gym over there. So how can we help with that situation? Once again, I would prefer not to implement a cut policy, but another option is offering more opportunities. We're going to do a survey just to kind of find out what the girls would like to do. And what I want to find out specifically is how, what could we add that will not hurt our current sports? I do not want to put us in a situation of cannibalizing something. Let's add this, and now all of a sudden we kill another sport. So what I want to look at possibly adding for the fall is one, flag football. It's not an official sport yet for CHASA, but it is becoming one. It's piloted right now by CHASA. Similar to how we add programs here, we got to start with the club program for like 3 years, and then it becomes an official sport. That's what CHASA is doing. I would like to look at possibly doing that. Some benefits for girls flag football. One, on our end, the infrastructure is already in place. We have fields, we have equipment. I know we're going to have to get some more stuff, but the upfront investment is pretty minimal. So there's also just a lot of interest in football for a lot of our young ladies. Many of them, they're big Broncos fans, and they would like to participate in that. Not saying that they're not allowed to play tackle football with us, but just whatever side of the argument you are for it, there are differences in a male's body and a female body and how they can handle certain things. So it will just be a fun opportunity. Once again, our infrastructure is already in place. It would be easy to add. Another sport that takes place in the fall that I have people ask me, I will say there's a little bit more investment to it, is softball. There's equipment, there's the field usage. We do not actually have a softball field. The city has one, and we could look at a similar situation like our baseball in terms of a rental and everything like that. So that is another option for our females in the fall. The nice thing with it is I don't want to completely kill volleyball. I just want to give girls options to seek other opportunities, and who knows, it would just be more fun. So anyway, another sport that I've looked at that I'd be interested in adding, it's a winter sport, is girls wrestling. Like flag football, the infrastructure is already in place. We have all the wrestling mats, we have the facilities. It's just an investment of uniforms and things like that. So before we look at cutting kids, let's see what we can add to give them opportunities. Another reason why I'm really wanting to focus more on the girls' sports is the Title IX situation. There's going to come a point where we do need to add more sports for boys. I would prefer for us to let's jump ahead of this. Let's get as far ahead of allowing for girls to have as many opportunities as possible, and then recover the boys when it's time, as opposed to all of a sudden, hey, we need another boys sport. Are we balanced? Are we ready to offer something for the girls at that same time? let's go ahead and jump ahead of it and get the girls taken care of, and then we can come back and fill in for the boys. Liability or Title IX aspect of it, I have yet to hear someone say, hey, you're not giving the boys the fair opportunity. We need to go to litigation. It's always on the opposite side because we're trying to recover from past injustices for females opportunities to participate. So I want to just I want to focus on girls additions uh, before we jump into boys. Um, what else? Something else that we have going on. Andre Wilkins, he implemented marching band. In the past, we used jazz band, but this last year he restarted the Salida High School marching band. Let's see. Right now, they're in their second year. Next year will be their third year, where we could officially kind of make this an activity. One of the things that they did last year was they bought used uniforms from a school down in Texas. And if you look at it up close, you'll notice there's a shape of Texas on their sleeves. One of the things that I found out uh, after the Woodland Park game, because of how many kids are participating in it, they actually had trouble fitting outfitting all the kids with a proper fitting uniform. With this program going into year 3, with the size of the program growing, one of the things that we need to look at is buying them new uniforms. Uh, I'm not looking at the idea of getting custom uniforms. I would like to at least just start out with a stock uniform. I also would like to just make sure we have enough inventory where we can properly outfit everyone in a proper fitting uniform. I'm really passionate about uh, a proper fit of a uniform. Years ago, I was at a volleyball game, and it was one of the opposing players, and I noticed that a young lady was really uncomfortable with her uniform. And after seeing it, I always said, I will break a budget to make sure that never happens. And so, as our kids are last year as they were freshmen, they've grown, they're getting bigger. We need to be able to outfit kids in various stages of life in terms of what size they have, they are, and their body types. So just kind of, I'm sharing all of this information about not an immediate need of today, not an immediate need of even like this semester, but just kind of looking to the future of what will be best for our kids. Other than that, any questions?
So you have a pretty established and passionate lacrosse group. What time of year is that? Is that a fall sport?
It's a spring sport.
It's a spring sport. So is that something we're considering though still?
So as I've looked at it and researched, one of the things that I've noticed, all the schools that participate in lacrosse, they are big schools, like 4As and 5As. Most of them 1,000+ enrollment. And even at those schools, they're in situations where they're having kids, like they're in a metro area, and they're having kids from outside their school district to help them form a team.
Yeah.
And so right now in our situation, I don't know if we're in that position.
It'd be nice to sort of maybe hear from them somehow, or I don't know what the process is, so I don't want to like voice that on you, but I do hear from a lot of those people in our community who are parents and who have an established group, so I want to make sure that that's given a real chance as we look to add sports. And I know it's not in the fall, but I feel very passionately about never having a cut policy. I think that really can change the trajectory of a student's life. So anything we can do to add, but I just want to make sure they get kind of a.
Yeah, is boys in the spring and girls in the fall, or?
I haven't looked into girls.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I did ask them to have a presentation of numbers and talked to several of the mutual member about that to bring it to the board.
Okay.
Something it's like a PowerPoint or something, or that we can send to us so we would have more information.
So the next step on that, once you guys have a process in mind, is Marco's going to have to do a Title IX survey basically and look at access and making sure people have those things. That's the first step in kind of evaluating any additional sports. Once that's done, then we can start the next conversation of here's what people said they were interested in. And so in the past, we've hired somebody external to complete that. And so I assume Marco might look at that same thing. But it's that survey that'll probably take a couple months to get complete. I mean, look at those data points, which would tell us access, would tell us interest. And then we try and make recommendations from that, which could include other people.
And I didn't know if it, because it is a chassis sport, if it has to go through that process versus being handled similar to like a mountain bike club that is more, donation based.
Yeah, I mean, that's the question. Is it a chassis sport or not? When we get into site policy, we'll talk about that piece. And so it could be either in some instances. So we'd have to look at that piece.
Thanks.
Does the mountain bike team, is it all boys or is it boys and
It's
girls?
boys and girls.
Okay.
But we could use a lot more girls.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I mean,
see some
that's-
pictures. I don't see too many. So
That's what I was
going
gonna say too, is like, before looking to add programs, like I know cross country has a ton of sophomore girls, but only 3 freshman girls. Mountain biking only has a couple sophomore girls. So I do think potentially like reaching into those venues and talking to students. So I think the survey would be good, but also encouraging, right? Like, hey, you should go run, you should go ride your bike. Because I do think that we're missing a lot of girls in a couple of those programs. So I don't know how that could be done, but just actively recruiting.
In terms of encouraging, one of the things that I've really tried to emphasize once I've got here, especially being a smaller school, there's a culture of specialization that's happening with sports. One of the things that I've said to many kids, if you want to get an athletic scholarship, be an athlete. I've seen so many kids focus on one thing, and what happens is they'll overuse certain joints and muscles over and over again. Before you know it, they're 15 years old and have the elbow of an old man. Knees are shot and things like that. And so I always want to encourage kids to diversify what they're doing, because you're training your body in a variety of different ways and not overusing specific parts of your body over and over again. So
Yeah, but I would think too that our volleyball program is so large, we probably struggle to have 20 of them actually actively participate.
so right now we have technically 4 teams. We have essentially 2 C teams, but what we've done, like for instance, last week when we played BV, we ended up doing a D team game, because BV, they had 90, we had 87. So it actually worked out perfect that we were able to schedule that extra game. We also have some extra opportunities scheduled for them. For instance, there's a tournament at the end of the year that our sub-varsity is going to participate in. We are still reaching out to other schools as well, just like, hey, do you need an extra game? And we giving those kids opportunities. But on general nights, what they're doing as a rotation is, like, for instance, C might play set number 1, the D might play set number 2, depending on how the results of those 2 happen. If there's a third one, they might mix it up and get them all rotating through.
Don't they do that like in the middle school football too? Like if they are like fifth quarter to let some of the younger.
So actually, it's not a 5th quarter this year because our participation is high enough. We're actually able to do a complete B team game. So
When they win, it's just one, right?
Yeah.
They have.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just one other totally random thing back to you talking about the uniforms
Mhm.
and wanting good fitting uniforms.
Mhm.
Just being a mom of kiddos, like I've been bringing hair ties to the middle school meets and tying up the boys' jerseys. They're like falling off. So is there some sort of process that you guys are following for like auditing all the uniforms and like keeping that kind of going with who
So-
needs updating and who doesn't, and a process for having someone order them who recognizes that a middle school child is like 70 pounds and not 150.
Correct. So usually you try and rotate about like every 5 years a uniform. I'm taking, let me say, I'm taking liberty with me being semi-new. This is my 3rd year, and I don't know for sure if I've like gone shorter than 5 on some, but I have been working on getting everyone new uniforms. Uh, we are actually working on middle school cross country uniforms that will properly fit. We are ordering youth sizes and not just adult sizes, because even an adult medium for some of our littles, that's a big huge gown, and so I'm really aware of that.
Okay,
And
good.
I hope to have everyone fitting properly.
Okay,
So
thank you.
I will just add, just as a facility thing, but because of the turf, a lot of what we spent money on the turf was that additional safety. Again, if you haven't had a chance to go out there and walk on it, that safety was a good investment for our kids. And then we did roll up all the pieces of turf that we thought we might be able to reuse. We tried to reinstall those at the home and fields to increase more for the soccer players, and they were not able to install it. So we tried to redo that again, but it's basically disintegrating and trying to be reinstalled. So there is no life left in that. We were hoping maybe sell some to the community, but there's no life left that we would be able to sell that. So that material definitely got all the use of it, and then plus a little. So we gave it our best go to reuse, but that's not going to be a possibility. I want to make sure the public is aware of that.
Marco, with like all of these activities and athletics, what's the capacity of? I mean, the deans are probably filling that assistant role to a good extent, from my understanding. But how many sports and activities can we have under the umbrella that doesn't require additional admin staffing?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
Well, just in general, like as we continue to have growth in activities, because it's not just the athletic programs. I think all activities are up.
Like, for instance, right now we have a choir concert going on, and I hear what you're saying now.
I'm just saying your capacity of managing it versus having an assistant dean of, and I think the deans at the buildings somewhat help, but
Yeah. And let me say, I greatly appreciate, especially with the addition of Jesse, one of the things we've done the last couple of years is we've sat down and, he's taken some activities, in particular when there's multiple at the same time. He'll go cover something and I'll cover, then Abigail, she'll cover. I will say we are stretched quite a bit, just because we have so many going on at one time. We've had some discussions with some sponsors about, like, we're not in a position to do like exclusive nights anymore. Like, while we would love to be able to say, hey, this activity is this night, and we're not gonna book anything else on that. It's difficult, and so it would be wonderful to have more assistance with that. In particular, on my personal side, dealing with some medical stuff at home, but we're making it happen. So,
and this might be more for Aaron, but like the roll up of the activities funding that we're working through, I always see that balance as like a $300,000 range. It's like, it seems like that balance is consistent. Do we just not spend that down, or am I seeing it wrong?
That'd be a question I need to talk to Sheila a bit more about, because you're talking about the activities. You're not talking about the stipends at this point. You're talking about
I'm just talking about like the activities account
Yeah,
always
yeah.
seems to
well,
flow with that kind of balance
Okay.
in it.
so I've got a little bit better with that. So we're bringing the financing into the Ivy with our system, but there's basically each sport has fundraising accounts as well as a budget account. Most of them are spending down their budget each season, but fundraisers, every time they do that gets to roll each year. And so that's why I think you're seeing that
Okay.
that continue to stay about even. They're spending their budget, but frequently that's rolling because of fundraising.
And I'll just also name one of the things I know it's going to become more of an issue as the years go by in our community. Right right now we're looking at the fall, but when we go to the winter, we're the only ones really with facilities for the community and recreation. So as you put more kids in a basketball team and those sort of things, it's going to reduce our ability to offer the community court time. And that is going to really pressurize that conversation community-wide around recreational facilities. Because particularly in the winter, we're the only ones with indoor spaces. So I just want to make sure the board's aware of that connection. So you're not surprised. It is increased in activities. It will pressurize that conversation.
What activities are we talking
Well, basketball, for example,
about? For
we
the community.
for the community. One, we partner with the city rec department, and they will use our basketball gyms. I've seen Cassie put them in the high school, the middle school, and at Longfellow. So all the venues are being used. I know like there's a desire for many adults to do what's called drop-in basketball, where they're able to do indoor pickup games and things like that. Similar situation with volleyball. There's a lot of that, the adult drop-in situation. So once again, like he's saying, like increase in participation, increase in use, the facility limitations. Um, you know, yeah.
Okay.
I want to say publicly, thank you, Marco. I think participation in activities outside of it's from the choir concert happening right now. It's actually exciting ones. BV and Salida came together. I was watching them practice today to do a public presentation, and the whole stage was filled. It's actually really, really cool. So kudos to Andre and Greer for putting that on. But all the way through your more traditional sports like a football, seeing that there, it's just essential to belonging, and it impacts our academics. And we know that those kids develop better as humans that have some sort of engagement in activities.
A connection too with the BV Salida choir. You know, one of the things that I'm proud of that's happened in recent years is developing a healthy rivalry with BV. I'm all about rivalry, but I don't like stupidity. And Adam over at BV and I kind of laugh. He got us two Texans that we're all about rivalry, but yet we're both after the same thing of like being good sports and supporting each other when we're not playing against each other, things like that. And then that's been something that's been wonderful to see. If you were able to attend the state basketball tournament last year, seeing their kids cheer for ours and seeing our kids cheer for theirs, you know, we're rival schools, but we're also the same county and the same community. So.
Okay. No other questions, it seems. Thank you, Marco. And
Thank you.
yes, keep up the great work. It's great seeing the amount of participation. So,
Awesome. Thank you.
back there. And so, all right, campus reports. We had a lot of good info in there. Any questions, additional comments from the board?
And we'll let you know Will's not here tonight because he's with the Colorado Education Initiative on a superintendent training, professional development. Jesse is with all the counselors at a different training in a different place. So all of our principals aren't here tonight, but they're all out training and getting better. They're still here.
She's like, all of our.
Yeah, sure.
Questions for the principals?
I don't think I have questions, but great job on all your data. It's great to see all of that good data for state testing.
As far as, nothing more, no standard.
I mean, I know there's still pressing issues, but Michelle, I saw you a few times, and the bathrooms at the middle school are wonderful, and many people commenting on it. So hopefully some of those capital things over the summer are making it a little bit better, but I'm sure there's always the next list of things. We do.
And I'd just like to say I've had a ton of compliments and thanks from parents about our new fencing on the playground and the back, and it really has made it a much more secure situation, much more easy for supervision, and that was all you guys
Okay.
Did pass on an email just to comment for you from Teresa answering some questions on enrollment. That's really complicated and tricky. If you have more questions about that, we'd be glad to sit with you and answer those. But definitely universal preschool for our community's sake, just to know it's not universal. It's not free. So those were not true things. And it continues to be an area where we're going to be losing funding, it looks like, and not have a hold harmless as promised. So I just want to make sure I know you guys are tracking that, but sometimes the community is not aware that the things that they vote for don't happen the way they think they voted for them. So I want to make sure I know you guys are. But
Okay. David, district report.
yeah, so you guys have quite a bit I sent out to you. First thing is, you have one of the best districts in the state again. So if you're looking at the data, if you're looking at all the test scores and the different pieces and parts, from my perspective, I don't think you can be more pleased with how your staff, your students, your community is doing. I think you're sitting 18th in the state out of 278 school districts. So I'd love to be number one, but that's not necessarily the number one definition of success. From that perspective, when you look at your achievement, you're one of the best in the state, whether that's 14th in reading or 15th in math, you are at the top of the heap. I want to highlight like Longfellow as a good example. So we had to go to the state statisticians because it didn't make sense because nobody has 96% of the kids make successful growth. It just doesn't statistically happen. When the state statisticians reviewed it, they said, let me check on that because that's not possible. And it is possible. So that means our third graders to fourth graders, as an example, 96% of them are successful. There's no one else in the state looking at those kind of numbers. And so I just want to make sure tonight we have our accreditation, but when you look at the data, when you look at those pieces and parts, I want to pause there and just say thanks to the staff and everything else because they made it happen and the kids and the parents. So I don't know if anybody else has comments, thoughts, questions.
I have a question, David. You were saying where we are ranked.
Mhm.
Is that public and private schools? And do you know if it's just public schools where we ranked?
Any of them, it can be a mixture of that is the answer to that. Like I will take the elementary school. I think it's 44th in the state, and that includes many of the private schools, but not all the private schools. It would include like charter schools, and so some of those, but not necessarily 100% of them. There's like almost 1,900 elementary schools in the state to give you a sense of that. So
I have a question. Our PSAT, do our ninth graders take the 8-9 PSAT, or do they all take the 10th?
they take the 8th, 9th grade PSAT test is what they take in the fall for the 9th grade year. Okay. Yep. And again, you're in the above state averages all around the board for those high school scores. Questions, comments?
I would just echo your sentiment on appreciation for all the staff and families and students taking the test seriously, and kudos to all you guys for making it happen. It's a fantastic feeling when we don't have to be talking about test scores that much.
It allows us to do things beyond the test scores. We get to talk about each individual kid and whether they're succeeding. It's just a real privilege to be in a place where we are. And of course, we've been able to maintain that for over a decade now. So deeply proud. There are areas where we're working on those things. I think 5th grade math, just to name it, is one of the spaces. We really think that's more of a curricular issue where what they were testing wasn't necessarily what we were teaching. So we're reviewing that curriculum to see if we need to make a change there to what we teach or the pacing at which we teach. So those are some of the examples, but overall, very deeply pleased. Okay. Just to be clear, many districts don't get to have this fun conversation. Enrollment is another thing that's on my list tonight. Enrollment, I think it's hard for the community to sometimes understand that. You would say, depends which perspective you want to look at, from a funding or versus a head count. We're up about 10 to 15 kids is where we're sitting. We'll see how it finally realizes. We'd start to pick up 1 or 2 over the next few weeks as families settle in a little bit more. So we are seeing growth, but we're not seeing massive growth. And I think some people, when they look at the housing, they look at those different things, we are not seeing the whole community for the number of kids just be at an exponential growth rate. It's a slow, steady rate around 1 to 1.5% growth, which fits right within where our predictions were from our demographic study. And I'm sure it'll be plus or minus on that, but about 1 to 1.5% growth is what we can expect. About 1,300 kids, so 13 to 20 kids is what we can expect. This year on the funding piece, we are seeing changes because we aren't filling as many slots at the Early Childhood Center due to universal preschool changes. That'll impact that overall numbers, but I don't know if anybody has questions about a certain building or any kind of enrollment thing. I'm sure I've got two principals here might still be able to help me.
I mean, the confusion around universal preschool and even some of the numbers. I mean, I think there was a question that Jody had that was along the lines of, did we lose 10 students? Did we stop serving 10 students, or did we lose funding for 10 students?
Do you have any idea of how many families were not able to place their children due to funding? So if the people in the valley collected that data and recognized that one in four qualify now, do we plan on collecting that data?
And then just to extend to that, we've also struggled to find that special ed teacher who has that early childhood certification, that perspective, how to take care of the littlest kids with special needs. And because of that, that's being a second qualifying factor that is also limiting our capacity and limiting our ability to use those funds. And if we are limited to use those funds, it actually changes what they said when they talked about hold harmless. It's turned into hold harmless with an asterisk. So
Is there any sense that the litigation will address these issues, or could?
why don't you try and I'll extend to that, Teresa.
Other than just what you said about the publicly around the litigation, I would encourage you to take a look at it and go for it as a case. I would just encourage you to take a look at it because it really does mirror what we're seeing in our program. And the challenge around that is led to funding people and funding the whole way. It's really all like that. It's really that really mirrors exactly what you're
We are expecting enrollment stuff to start to get clear around the 3-year-olds in the next 7-10 days. So that'll impact. Once we get clarity, we'll start to build a picture around what that means. But it's just always hard to be operating for a couple months and then determine whether they can fund you or whether you're going to get paid for that. So I think you'll see some negative financial impacts to the district that we'll probably have to roll with. And then the bigger issue will be next year. That could really have a significant impact on our workforce who rely on us so much in order to offer early education and the childcare aspect, because that is kind of the Achilles heel of our local economy. So I'm almost more worried about the 12 months from right now. There'll be a financial bill for today, but the tomorrow bill could have very significant impacts to all of our local economy. And on a cheerful note, we have more kids than we had last year, which means the budget that you guys built on a zero increase will be able to be afforded. We're right inside that space. And Aaron can talk later if you want to around Proposition HH. We have some predictive numbers now around how that clearly, if it passes or not, how assessed values as we're trying to build the budget. But on the enrollment side, which is 90% of revenue, we look like we'll be about flat. And then we'll see probably some loss to our plan through UPK, which has not gone the way they said it would, as well as probably, it depends how Proposition HH goes. But on the enrollment side, you're seeing the biggest impact right now, just so you're aware, at our elementary school in those intervention spaces. And those are important. You don't get 96% growth without those interventions happening, right? And so it is a really powerful thing. And like we've talked about, it could be that we're looking at some more trailers or some other small spaces that allow us to continue to expand interventions for those kids who need a second dose of learning. So I wouldn't be surprised in 6 months if that's in front of you.
So with Prop HH, and it's not necessarily on the agenda, but our initial thought process with loss of funding may be.
Yeah, I think I told you about 150-ish at the board retreat was what was potential if it passed. That we just the most updated numbers we have are about 180,000 if it were to pass, that we would be at risk from the mill levy overrides, basically. So what it's going to do is it's going to lower assessed values, which lowers that piece of it. Everything else, the assessed values, the state equalization makes up for the loss, but our mill levy override won't. So I think the most recent number was 176,000, and that was actually from the county. So I feel really confident in that number at this point.
Does that turn into similar to kind of the 10-year mill levy increase piece, potential higher PPF funding? Or is that not necessarily with HH?
I don't think so, no.
No, and HH is very complicated. There's actually 6 tax law changes embedded inside of HH. So it is, I'm going to try and keep my opinion out of this. At this moment, it does not appear to benefit the school district's ability, even though people will be paying significantly more on the property tax. We will either see reduced funding for our local district is what the net result will be of that piece. So we will be actually be operating with less money while our people are giving more money, which will be very difficult to explain to someone in the newspaper. That's what it looks like.
I think I put in my report too that we're trailing a little bit off of CMC, especially after the meeting we had with them. And yesterday's meeting, it sounds like they're not willing. They're going to remain neutral on it at this point. But it also doesn't seem to affect them as much as it does us because they don't have. They're actually looking at reducing mills. They have that ability to some extent because they almost have. Their funding is just different than ours, and so it's not going to impact them nearly the way it will impact public schools in this case. It's hard to now say we're going to draft off them because it sounds like they're going to remain neutral and it doesn't have the impact to them that it does to us. So we'll have to dig a little deeper. I think me and David are going to have an actual, I don't know, recommendation about what we think is best for the district come October's meeting.
And do you know if Casby or Case or any of those other entities have made a statement yet or a position?
They've not. Normally they don't make a statement on those issues. They just have too many memberships because some of your memberships will benefit from this. Like an Eastern Plains district would be a good example. They're going to benefit from this, and our district will not. So they're going to be stuck between competing things. They'll be quiet. So back to data. You're one of the best school districts in the state again. You do have an action item to accredit all of your programs at the performance level because they're just they're amazing. And so very, very excited about where the district's sitting as we continue to excel, and just a lot to celebrate.
Okay, no other questions. We'll move on in the agenda. Thank you, David. As always, welcome to stay. If not, thank you for your time. Have a good rest of your evening and good rest of your week. So jump real quick, get through these, and then see when we need to take a break. But in consent agenda, a lot in there because of these policies. So looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Jen. Anybody have questions or comments? Step one, the policy review done. Thank you, Jen and Mandy, for digging in on those. Making a lot of good progress.
The only question I have is on the ACD. We don't actually have that policy yet, right?
So we do not have that policy, and so ACD is a commitment to religious neutrality. We have a regulation policy, but we do not have a policy to do that piece. Is one of the benefits of discovering this and doing a deep dive. I've asked our lawyer to prepare that. It's actually not required, and many districts don't have that policy. I said, but I think it's important for our board. So in second reading, then you guys would have a red line policy in front of you.
Okay. So this is just to call attention that we're
Just
working
call
on it,
attention,
but we
make sure if
actually
the
will
community
have it.
has any input on that topic, they can do so. You'll have a red line from the lawyer before next board meeting.
On all these policies, I know we've got audited all of them. Are we just putting on the agenda ones where there's changes, or are we putting them all?
The one that's on consent are the ones that look right. We couldn't find any problems with them. So we've reviewed those. Anything that had a major change to it that's not in consent is being dealt with later. Like this policy Mandy just mentioned, ACD, it's why it's in a different section to make sure we can track those things.
Wondering why we're going through 3 readings of policies.
On those, these ones right there, we won't. It'll just say review and it won't come back next. Those won't come back. Thank you. Yep, those are not going through a third reading. Those are just review and trying to make sure it's posted for future generations, and they're trying to come back and refigure out.
Yeah, we just wanted to be very clear with each policy where it landed. Make sure we didn't miss.
Yeah.
Someone in the future could look back and see where we're at. Ready for vote? Dr. Hill. Mr. Hobbs.
Aye.
Mrs. Maddox.
Aye.
Mrs. Pascal.
Aye.
Ms. Schickman.
Aye.
And Mr. Smith.
All right. Okay. Before we jump into discussion items, You guys want a 5-minute break? All right, 5-minute break. 7:15.
Turn the mics off while we break.
10.
Okay. We're back at ready to jump into discussion items. So I think that this first one is leave benefit package, including all these various policies. Mr. Blackburn, take it away.
Yeah, we have tried at CBT over various times to try and improve these things. So I just want to name that. And frequently, what has happened is we've gone, well, it's too complicated, so we'll just leave it the same. And so here we are again, trying to deal with this complication. I think I'm going to go ahead, Aaron, if you go ahead and pass out that worksheet we were developing. And I'm going to let Aaron walk you through this because I think the first thing that we want to talk about is what is the problem that we're trying to fix? I think we got to get clear about that. And that's really the outcome of this discussion is any kind of boundaries to say, what is that? I talked about on my board report, just that balance between management and really taking care of our staff. We want to have great policies that take care of our staff. That's everybody's goal, but they also have to be managed. In order to be managed, though, they've got to have accounting, right? You got to be able to track who's got what and did this person use it. That's an important piece. You've got to be able to communicate it so people can understand it. If it gets so complicated, then you're not going to be able to do a good job of taking care of staff. It has to be kind of I'll call it the carrot and the stick, right? There has to be enough of a management system that you can figure out who's using it well and who might be taking advantage of the system. We're talking about theoreticals. It's normally the 1 out of 100 person who might take advantage of that. But you have to have that ability, but you also have to have the carrot, particularly with schools, because if you just simplify it down and everyone takes their simple leave and fully actualizes that, our kids don't have teachers in the classroom, right? And so there's got to be that reason to not just take a powder day effectively, right? What is the benefit enough, as well as what's the corrective action if you would take advantage of something. So you've got to be able to manage it. It's got to be simple enough that you can communicate it, manage it, engage it, and then we want it to take care of our staff really, really well. So just to start there, and I'm going to let Aaron just talk about just this one leave policy. This is not all your leave policies. So.
Yeah, I mean, this is just sick leave. And I think when David, so context for me with this is when, as you know, I've been kind of doing an audit with the office. And I think the second rotation was in payroll. And I think we shared, it ended up being at the end of July, the June payroll. We paid out about $160,000 worth of comp time, vacation time, sick time, sellbacks, and retirements, as well as personal leave that we paid out, which kind of was a red flag because none of that is budgeted. And so got diving into the process of what are all the policies? How do we account for this? How do we prepare for this? I think in terms of taking care of employees, like that's my number one priority. We've talked about that both in my interviews and with David. That's a huge part of what I want to accomplish. However, I want to be able to do it in a way where, one, we know how to manage it, and then also that staff knows how to use the way that we're taking care of them and understands the policies fully. So anyways, started diving into different policies. When David first asked about this, and actually this is piggybacking off of Sheila's, part of this is what Sheila already sent you. So the top piece is the medical trust payout. So anytime someone retires in the district over 20 years, one of our policies states that they get the top part of their pay column, basically, in terms of all of their hours paid out at that hourly rate, and it's put into a medical trust. So Matt, you mentioned that happened, I think last board meeting, you had seen that was in the payables. That happened with a couple different employees who retired this year. It ends up being a pretty substantial sum, about $30,000 roughly each time that happens. If the sick leave is maxed out, if their sick leave that they can bank is maxed out, basically. So that's the top column. So that's how much we've paid out in a medical trust every year. There's 1 year here, I think 2021, if I remember correctly, was a year there was a early retirement incentive or something that was happening during the COVID years, and that's why we see a pretty large chunk there. The second row is the sick leave payout. So at the end of each year, for policy, employees can sell back their sick leave. Once they've hit their max, they can sell back up to 8 days. There's a variety of amounts that's worth, depending on how long you've been in the district. If you've been here under 6 years, then it's worth nothing. The money goes away if you were to leave, or all that sick days goes away if you were to leave before then. And I don't know the exact policy, but it goes up to $10 a day, up to 80, and then all the way up to where you get your full top of your pay scale column. So each year we have people that want to sell that out, and I think that's great, but that's the number that we've done over the past 7-8 years now. And you can see Sheila put there the total that we paid out between those two, just in sick leave, and then what we budgeted for. I think that's something we need to adjust. Obviously, as you can see, we need to budget for that much better going forward under the current policy. I think one of the kind of alarming things is you can see that our actual audit accrual, so that's how much, if we were to pay out every sick leave hour right now, this is how much we'd owe, and you can see that in that row. I think one of the kind of alarming things is we see that almost double in the past 8 years. And so the question is going forward, how do we manage and make sure that we know what our liability is going to be long-term in the next 5-10 years, and how do we manage that policy correctly? And then the bottom section here is just over the past 5 years, the amount of accrued hours so on the August paycheck, that's when everybody accrues their sick leave when they come back to school. The second row is the amount of used hours total in sick leave. And so the third row is how many excess hours are going into banks or getting paid out every single year. And so, and then you can see that bottom row is just the total amount of excess accrued hours that are going into banks or getting paid out. I'm not going to tell you, like, the point of this worksheet is not to say, hey, the policy's good or the policy's bad. I think we take care of employees, and I think we can continue to do even better at that. I think the point is it's really, really complicated. This is one policy that we have in place. It's slowly getting to a point where it's very difficult to manage in our office because you also tied into this. Personal hours can roll into sick hours at the end of the year. Personal hours are paid out at a different rate than sick hours are paid out. It becomes really, really complicated to manage from a payroll, from an audit, from just a financial aspect in general. And so I think that's one thing to go into it, especially because you could look at this and you could say, oh, perfect. So these excess hours accrued should equal, the increase in audit accrual. That's not totally true. If somebody under 5 years leaves, then those hours just go away. So it's even that becomes a math problem. You have to look at each individual employee and try to figure out how much liability we have for each specific, every hour that's out there. So it's a complicated thing to do. I think the point of this is just that we have a lot of hours that are out there. And the question is the liability that we have long-term, is that going to continue to grow? But also, are we spending our money correctly on the right leave plans to take care of people? And I think that's the number one question. I think that's a question that honestly, it's not a question for me. I'm happy to help manage as long as we can find a way to manage it. But I think it's complicated is the number one piece here that we want to share. And for our staff in the business office, it's become a real challenge to try to figure out each one of these pieces and then make sure that we can support people in taking their benefits appropriately.
So in order to come up with that audit accrual, you have to take each person in the year they are, apply that person to the policy, and the next person in line is going to get a different application of the same policy. And then you have to make an actuarial prediction over what that risk is, how much they might use. So that's complicated. Then you need to stack on top of that the personal leave, which impacts each one of those cells for each one of those people across the years. And then you have sick leave bank, which then is on top of that piece. And then you have some various other loose ones on top of that. So again, just the ability to say and communicate how to actually take care of people, I think is a struggle we think is one of the problems we want to get better at.
And I think too, because they tie together is one of the complicated pieces. This is one of the policies. This is one of your leave policies, but the personal leave ties into this pretty greatly because it can roll over. And also you can earn personal time throughout the year in different situations. On some campuses you can, on some it's more complicated on how you might earn that personal leave time, which could be an inequity there. Again, that's something to consider. And I think that's the discussion questions here. But it all ties together. And I think that was really what David was asking about when we were going through that, trying to figure out what is the actual values that are out there and what are we looking at as we're talking about. It is very, very complicated. And I see why in the past it's been like, it's too complicated. Let's just stay where it's at. That's fair enough.
So the audit accrual line, the math problem can't be seen on this page.
Correct.
It's
No.
because it's kind of the combination of the payouts over under budget plus this kind of excess hour accrued number.
Yeah.
But it's each person at that year, how that, all the
Yes.
different leave policies impact that person and all the different banks.
Yeah, it has to do with what hours roll into sick leave at the end of the year from personal leave, and then also where each person stands in terms of years of service and how much that's worth. And it just pays out very differently. Sick leave pays out by day, whereas personal leave pays out by hour. So there's complications there when they start talking about how they roll into each other. So you can never really fully predict it until you get to the end of the year, and then you can see that math problem, but you won't know until the very end.
So this is one essentially per person, a significant Excel algorithm that is going to have a range and a likely number.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So we're always going to have a high and a low possibility of range, and then a high and a low with a certain confidence interval, and then a pretty good guess in the middle.
Yeah, and I think we're getting better at being able to predict it, and I think we need to adjust potentially the budget going forward to really show that we're predicting it well. But
Better.
yeah, and so I think there's some improvements that we can make there, but it is truly every year you really won't know until you get to the end of the year. And some of it is changing dramatically. I think staffing in general and just culture is changing between career paths and things like that as well. Like who's going to be involved, who's going to stay in a career for 20 years nowadays? It's less than it used to be 20 years ago, I think. So that changes things. I don't know. That's neither, again, it's neither here nor there on what the right policy is. I think me and David, we really believe we take care of employees, number one. And that's the biggest thing. So
Do these numbers include admin?
yeah, this is every
So
employee.
some of these things are tenured principals and things like that.
David, do you know why, like back in 16, 17, the budget was 80,000 and now the budget's 14,000? Like why was the budget so high in the past? And then as our costs increased, we lowered the budget.
That's great. Well, you can see that 80,000 was leaving us extra money, and I was pushing. So I'll look at 17 and 18, 16, 17. You're looking at 43,000, 56,000. I was pushing on Sheila when she came in to say tighten it up. So she brought it down to that smaller amount of 50,000. And then we amended the budget 1920. And I think that's where it really starts to go down to
Well, and
14,000.
that's kind of then when we hit COVID too,
Right.
right? And so probably that's the difference.
Right. And then we've just
So
been.
Sheila is getting it to a tight number. and
So
then-
she's taken that. We squeezed the limit as much as we could, but there's so many things that happened during the pandemic with people changing in their careers and lives.
Do you have a sense of, obviously, the high number 2021, and then it's been creeping down a little, but not to the rate of where it was? Is there, I mean, with your crystal ball, is that something that will keep going down? Is something unique happening?
I'm sorry,
Is that
can you-
higher?
I'm sorry, one more time. It's the
Well, just they're so much higher right now, but getting lower. Right, from the 119 to the 100 to the 77.
I
Yeah.
would guess it's
Yeah.
like just we've rotated our staff.
But
Yeah.
it could just be up and down.
I think there's two things. I think a large chunk of it is we've rotated a decent chunk of staff over COVID, and so anyone that's under that 5-year period, that just drops off because that there's no monetary value to it at that point. So I think that's part of it. And then again, I think this was the year, correct me if I'm wrong, where there was some early retirement things out there where in terms of fiscal year 2021. So I think you saw a sharp increase there. And I think it's going down just, I think COVID was hard. I think a lot of people used sick time over those courses of years, which is good. That's what it's there for. We want to take care of people. So I think we saw less. I think that's one of the things.
So at the end of the year, if you could sell back up to 8 days, if you don't sell those back, do they then accrue for over the course of your career? Or is it different for every person?
No, yeah, your sick time accrues, and this is where you can look at the policies, but it accrues up to a certain point. I think for full-time 12-month employees, it's like 730 some hours and 600 and some for and you may know the policy better than I do, to be honest, at this point. but that's, yeah, yeah. I don't know the exact number, but I think that's part of the discussion item tonight. So
Do you know why the accrued liabilities went from 250,000 to over 500 between 17-18 and 18-19? That's essentially doubled that 1 year time span.
I don't personally. I'll have to chat with Sheila about it. I had 5 years of access at this point when I was doing it, so I didn't have access to that year when we
I mean, I
first.
just
did
wonder
it.
if the auditors recognize some. I don't know. It seems.
Yeah, it's probably an accounting adjustment.
Yeah.
Would be my
more than,
guess. Yeah.
Looking at the numbers of how it's calculated.
The other thing that goes into it is which I'm a big proponent of putting money in people's pockets, and I think you've done a great job of that, especially last year. But that does increase the value when you talk about how you can pay out at a salary column. If you give out if the salary columns increase, that's going to change the value of it too. So over the last 5 years, we've seen increases in salary, and that's going to have an impact on that number as well, because that changes the value of your sick hours.
So the payout isn't at a flat rate. It's based upon each individual employee and how much they're earning.
Depends on how long you've been in the how long you've been with the
I have
district.
it pulled up. So like the payout for 0 to 5 years of service is 0, 6 to 7 years of service would be $10 per day, 8 to 9, 15 per day, 10 to 11, 20 per
Okay.
day, 16 to 19 per day.
So it is a flat
And then once you get above
year.
20, your 20th year, then when you retire, it's put into a medical trust payout at your. So say you're a step 20. At that point, it would be paid out at step 1. Then it's calculated as an hourly rate at step 1, whatever your hourly rate would be at that. And then those hours are paid out directly at an hourly rate into the medical trust. But until then, it's paid out as days.
So it brings up a couple things there. Is it the right benefit to encourage people, right? Is it the right way to kind of correct the people who may or overtake the benefit? For instance, if you're young and new in your career, there is no benefit to you. There is no carrot in that policy currently. There's a lot of benefit to your veteran to hold on to those things. How does that fit our current thing? Is that the right carrot and stick to go through those? I mean, that's an example of complications plus all the different ones. I think something that I've been going through that is helping me is to not, I really feel like the best solution is to throw out all our policies and start fresh on a clean sheet of paper. And not everyone may agree with that. But it is so complicated. I don't know how to unravel this knot and make it take care of people and be manageable, right? And you can communicate it to people so they can take advantage of it. And the benefits are really clear to them. I want to make sure we're really good at taking care of people in a normal year, a normal set of circumstances. Like, I got to take my kid to the dentist, right? I got the flu this week, right? We want people to be able to be sick and take advantage of those benefits in a normal year. What we have is we have people kind of taking their normal leave and then they bank it, accrue it, and save it for some of these other long-term risks. One might be like my family planning, and so we want to have a child, right? We're looking at maternity leave. Our maternity policy needs to have all those days banked, and so you see young families banking up their today to try and have enough time to take off. And I think that's the thing I want us to look at. So let's just pick just the maternity and say, how do we take care of people really well when they're looking at their family leave? What's the right best policy to do that? And let's write that policy, which can be a short-term disability policy. Well, maybe if that's what we need to do, we buy that for everybody versus people trying to make this mechanism work for this thing. Or if you look at a cancer risk, right? What happens if I get really sick? What happens when my parent gets really sick? Well, I've got to have enough saved of the now from the ordinary, and I save it up. So I got this massive bank so that when my parents are at end of life, I can take off a ton of time to go do that life transition. Well, if that's why don't we design the right solution for that piece? And let's have that so that people aren't trying to steal from today and it's getting complicated and they're stacking this and that and they're doing lunch duty at the middle school so that they can get an extra personal hour so that they can, and they're doing this and that. I think that's the piece I would like us to start to look at of what's the best way to take care of people with their big risks that are extraordinary, and what's the right way to take care of people with just an ordinary year, right? We have a 4-day school week. We work a 156-day contract, 150 student contact days, and it's really important because we need those staff with those kids. And that's a real big difference between what other industries can do. So, for instance, you could simplify it, be very manageable, and take care of people and say, you get 10 days of just leave. Right? I don't care. I'm sick of this. So why not take 10 days and 150 school days of snow days? Well, the answer is that'd be the policy. It'd be very manageable, be clear. But that's going to hurt our kids, right? You wouldn't criticize somebody for if you wrote the policy for taking that, but that's going to have a negative impact on our kids. That's just an example that pops up for me of how do we make sure, hey, there's a benefit, which is why you get these big accruals, right? There's a benefit to not taking today and saving it for tomorrow in that medical trust. But if I don't want people robbing themselves in their second year of their career because they're saving for their retirement in their 30th year. Right? That doesn't, if that's what we really think is the best way to take care of, then let's write a policy that says, hey, you stick it out 20 years and give a lifetime of service to us, then here's a retirement benefit. If that's what it is, then let's make a retirement benefit versus trying to make this thing that wasn't designed to be a retirement benefit somehow people who are smart and know how to use the system, because it is unequally being accessed, right? It's not every staff member knows how to do it because it's so complicated. So those are some of the thoughts running through my head. I don't know if that resonates with anybody or it brings up questions or.
I would really like to have this discussion because I think change is hard and things can be scary, but we talk a lot about teacher pay and budgets and things like that. And we're working within a system, as we've all said, where it's not a system we created. It's not necessarily a system we can fix. And if there are systems where we can make it better, where someone isn't like, oh, I might want to have a baby in 5 years. I'm going to drag myself to school today with the flu so that I know I can be off and get paid for that. If there's a way to try to address things like that, I would be very interested in doing that.
Yeah, have we looked at short-term disability policies before?
Not in this manner, not in the manner we might say, like we buy accident insurance for everybody, like to put it in the insurance package almost and say, we'll buy everyone a short-term disability piece.
Our insurance packages, different companies offer, cancer, short-term disability, long-term disability, kind of like an AFLAC.
And that's what we have, yep.
Policy. I know other big institutions use those, but now, there's those things that you don't want people coming to school sick. Don't want them to drag them in because you're not getting just you sick. You're getting the kids sick. You're getting other teachers sick, other staff members sick. As they go around, and depending on what they're doing and where they're at, we don't want that either. So, we want everybody to be healthy and strong. So when you get sick, your kids get sick. It's just like that never ending. And we don't want to see that because that happens every year. And staying healthy and staying well and staying home if you're sick, or being able to take a day off if you want to take a day off for whatever reason it may be. Some of the coaches do, so they can do their sports and things like that too. So there's very legitimate reasons to take that time off. And as we are looking at sports and all of that, as Martha was talking about, and adding, if we add more sports, then we add more coaches, and there's that incentive to be a coach and to be at school. So again, that puts pressure on Evelyn to have transportation and all of those things. And one person gets sick, two people get sick, that can totally disrupt their own practice. So looking at some of these policies that we are looking at and how that works. I know we have the full-time sub. I don't know how that will work out when, because they're only the one person. There's 28 open days right now for the next, 1,200 hours or something like that, for substitute. So how do we fill those? How many subs do we have? What if the subs get sick? It's all of those things that we have to look at as well.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely seems to me like a sick leave, personal leave should be one and the same. If someone feels like they're unable to come to work, like you said, it doesn't matter if they're taking a personal day or a sick day. Like it does seem to me like maybe that could be a simplifying factor, is to at least look at how we could combine sick and personal leave into one thing, right? I mean, they're adults. They don't need to tell us why they're not coming to work.
I'm not
From the vet.
from you. Yeah, and I mean, in the districts I've looked at, that does seem like a pretty common practice to have no differentiation there. Obviously, I haven't surveyed the whole state. The few I've asked.
I don't know the full history, but I believe that the personal versus sick time in our district is partially because of how they're viewed through different HR and payout structures and things like that. So I don't know the full history on that. I'd love to dig deeper into that. But I think that was one of the sticking points in the past when it came to
That'd be
potentially
nice
going to a
to
universal. So that's something I'm
analyze
trying to
with a full
research a bit.
review.
But I think we also have the piece of sick leave bank in particular, probably where the bulk of these kind of accrued, I guess, hours are.
No, actually, sorry, Joe. Sick leave bank's not included in that
Oh.
sheet at all.
It's on top. Sick leave bank is on top of that.
Sick leave bank is on top of that.
Well, in the sick leave bank, when I was reading through that policy, to me, that seems like, I mean, it mentioned that superintendent is sort of in charge of more like the classified staff.
Mm-hmm.
But if I understood correctly, the rest of that policy is pretty much run by the SEA. They get the hours, they do the whole thing, right? And it's not really. So is that kind of a thing where that is, if the staff wants to have a sick leave bank, like that's fine? And am I misunderstanding that we're not really managing that as a board?
You are. This is a sticky one that
Okay.
I'm not a big fan of. This would be an area, if I had my say, I would change this, because from an HR standpoint, you have staff managing a benefit for other staff's
Right. It seemed a little
medical
weird.
needs
to me.
effectively. And there's a lot of,
And voting
think-
whether or not it gets approved or not approved. And
Yes.
those things.
you
So
know,
like a HIPAA violation situation, or
it could turn into a HIPAA violation. It just depends on how people share what they learn, right? If you share it with somebody, then you've shared it with somebody. That's why if they share it a second time, that you'd run into that issue. I think there's a better way to do that from my perspective, but I understand why some people want that. My question is, why do we have a sick leave bank? We've got somebody who's facing cancer. Why are we? Our system should solve that, and maybe the sick leave bank is the way to solve that. But I want to make sure that we have a great way to take care of somebody in that situation. They shouldn't have to go to get a vote to see if the staff will support them or they got enough.
or if 3 people have cancer at the same time, would there not be enough? Would they not be addressed equally?
And then when you read the policy, what's actually happened is okay, so now we're looking at like an accounting accruing. So Aaron, if I speak poorly, please correct me. On the sick leave bank, everybody to be involved, they have to donate one of their days, right? And that gets you memberships. So then everybody here, the 9 of us, we donate 9 days. The next year we have 18, then 27. And then I leave and go to a different district. What happened to my day? It stays in there. But I'm on the right time. So the bank is actually growing. When someone takes withdrawal, it's a question of what happens if this person doesn't repay their days they borrowed, right? It's not a net zero closed math equation. It's growing on one side because it just keeps growing as people donate. And right on the other side, you've got this, what happens when somebody uses it. Let's say somebody has cancer and they're going through that this year and they use 12 days they give them. And the next year, the situation declines. Do they pay back those 12 days? Pay back those 12 days, nor would we want to ask them to pay back those 12 days. Go take care of what you need to take care of for you or your family. And so that accounting doesn't really have any edges to it from a management system. And it's operating then on top of personal and sick. And it does always get complicated around the maternity leave because maternity leave doesn't get covered. But if you have complications like an emergency C-section, then the days that are covered by the emergency C-section could go to the sick leave bank. And now you have that being discussed by staff and voted on. I mean, there's a lot of things where we could say, I'm not sure that's the best way to do it.
So I just like people to be a little more supported. They don't feel like they're going to lose their home if they get sick. And if that's something that we can address, I'd be into that.
Can we look into that kind of, is that or something like that?
I think we can. And we wanted to just start this conversation. So let me just put some ideas in from a discussion standpoint, because I want to go back to collaborative bargaining team and have this conversation. We have this set up for Thursday morning. Is anyone here going, looking at the leave package? This is great, David. We should really just update it a little bit. And other than that, we like how it looks. Is there anyone who's coming in and leading this discussions like, David, doesn't need an overhaul, make some minor tweaks? Okay, I didn't think that was the case. So we're looking at an overhaul. There's two different ways to maybe overhaul it. There's trying to overhaul the relationship all these different leave policies have, and bargaining team can work on that. Or there's just starting from fresh and just deal with certain things. Does anyone have an opinion on those two tactics or strategies to try and tackle the conversation?
Could you say that one more time?
Am I trying to keep what we have and upgrade it and make it work well? Or am I just starting fresh to solve the problem, right? And I'm probably, reality is it's both and, but to try and get the strategy set up if I know how to operate the conversation.
And it'd be nice to know what a fresh start would look like and what that would mean, and if our staff would also enjoy that.
Yeah, I think being dynamic in those conversations, some is just going to be improved, some let's just start from the beginning. And in those conversations, just have the dynamic ability to take it whichever way it goes.
Are these negotiated, or is this
All of these are negotiated currently. Mm-hmm.
What is working, take what's working, and if that's the way we want to continue that, and then, okay, so this needs help, how do we want to change it, instead of like we're doing the whole.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Two different styles. So you'd be more of the just.
Something has to be working, right? Or if
Maybe the
something's
staff-
not working,
We're doing a
then-
good job of taking
then,
care of
you know,
people.
Scrap the whole thing and then see where we go from there. Like, what do we want? How do we want to approach it?
I would love to know what's possible in a perfect world
Okay.
that could happen.
without any potential for misuse or misunderstanding?
Yeah, and it'd be great to present something that really solves a lot of people's individual day-to-day concerns with worrying about health and retirement, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe if there's something that amazing that the district can do that is less expensive and easier than what we're doing now, that would benefit everyone, that would be.
And maybe gives the district a little bit more better way to know what's coming down the pike with these payout costs, right? Like if we had something more manageable, if people weren't accruing.
Okay. Let me ask you another question, just because I'm trying to find boundaries, and you guys may say I don't have an opinion on this. If I go with the ordinary versus extraordinary, two different solution sets, what seems like an ordinary expectation? You guys be like, yeah, that seems reasonable to give to our staff from your perspectives, versus if I come back and say, well, every year I think every staff member needs about 30 days to do what they need to out of a 156 day contract. I would assume most would be like, that doesn't feel ordinary. That feels a bit much.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you guys have like a, hey, David, I don't want to bring back something where you're like, yeah, you're not even in the ballpark yet. What feels reasonable for a normal year to offer staff?
Do you have any data on what the average person takes every year?
No.
Yeah, maybe what
But could we-
comparable districts do would be nice to know.
Okay.
I know how easy that data is for you.
There's going to be a lot of research that's going to have to happen.
8 is
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
whole week.
3 weekends.
Okay.
But if you're only working 156 days, that's still a lot of days. And you'd be out of the grand scheme of things. I mean, you could take off, and that could be a really long time period if you kind of just, right? I mean, nurses, like, as we know, we all manipulate and the schedules and that kind of thing to get the most done. I'm just curious, like, if they're gone for those 2 weeks, how do we find substitutes for them? For those 2 weeks?
I can't imagine it being.
I don't
less,
think they would
but
take
that over the course of the year.
I don't think
I mean,
most
those-
people
those are
would
the
take
concerns
2
with
straight
the
weeks, right?
substitution.
You're
Yeah.
saying 8 days total. Like you could take
Right.
one here, maybe someone takes 2 weeks.
guess
But I
it-
wouldn't imagine most people would take 2 full weeks. We're not seeing that, right?
Are we saying we're
It's
going
like
to
you
have?
take a day.
There, I mean, if somebody gets ill, parent gets ill. I mean,
Right. So
you have
here
to
and
travel out of town. There's a
so here and
definite penalty. I mean,
there,
it's
happens.
legit.
That's what I'm talking about.
And I'm not denying anybody any of that time.
What's our current policy? So if you're looking at
I was
sick,
just trying to
you
add it
can
all
use as much as you need to. After 3 days, I can ask for a doctor's note. Right? It's a May. I don't have to. I can ask for a doctor's note after 3 days. With personal, you can use 3 days in a calendar month total. So what some people can do is, right, they might go and they cannot extend one of our long breaks like spring break or Labor Day, right? Or else they lose a day of pay for those shoulder days to try and be that buffer so people don't abuse it. But somebody can take a sick day, they'll take a pay cut on one day, then they'll take 3 personal days, and then it'll line up, and then it goes from March to April, so they'll take another 3. I mean, it's not common, but that's the person who's going to take advantage of the system. That's a manageable system that allows you to address that person without somehow blaming or criticizing everyone else, right? So I think so to give you an idea, that's how personally 3 days in a calendar month.
But how many do they get total for the whole year?
No.
Accrued, or how many can they take
I guess. I don't know.
currently under the policy?
I guess currently, like, how many sick days could someone take in a year? How many vacation days? And how many personal days, right? Those are the 3 categories that we have right now.
Without
Yeah.
touching
Vacation
a
and personal.
accrued.
Right, without touching an accrued. Yeah, there's
Yep.
a vacation
So-
too. The vacation says they can take 40 hours, 80 hours, and then 120 hours.
Well, and we need to clarify that because vacation doesn't apply to everybody.
So there is vacation.
There's
and
vac-
personal.
There's vacation, but it
There's
only applies
vacation,
to certain.
personal, and sick leave.
Plus
So
sick
that's-
leave.
So that's what I want to know is what's that total number that if someone took all 3 of those, what could they take in the year?
Yeah, and it would depend drastically on what category of employee they are because each employee has different accruals.
Okay, so let's say they're a teacher.
So a teacher
Who's
a teacher basically gets the equivalent. It's basically the equivalent of 2 school weeks of sick leave as well as 2 work days of personal time. In terms of how it's paid out, that's the equivalent that they get.
So kind of like
Most,
10 days.
if you're looking at like a full-time, full year, 12-month employee, you're looking at 2 weeks, so 10 days of sick time, 2 days of personal time, and then vacation on top of that based upon your tenure, basically.
Yeah, I would love to just go to one personal time off and everything gets managed into there.
Okay.
And probably be in that 2 to 3 week time frame of total allocated days per year. I mean, on the 150 contact days or 156, it's roughly 10%. So that's kind of my upper boundary. And then obviously figuring out what's an appropriate accrual and dealing with these annual accruals and caps and payouts and to take care of staff. Like, yes, you don't have to bank all this time to have it for these other extenuating circumstances, but rather we're going to take care of you because of this or this or this or whatever bucket it may fall into. But just to simplify the process even.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the number is. I mean, obviously there's going to be a lot of pushback from staff if it cuts the amount of time. So not knowing what that is, I'm reluctant to throw a number out. I'd like to know what that is. To me, I don't see vacation on the list here. So is that not negotiated or?
Vacation is only available to 12-month employees, so 245 days employees. It's very few employees, and that is on your action items to remove as negotiated.
Okay. So that
Because that's mostly admin, right?
It is. There are some custodians who work in that same range. Those would be the people who might, someone not
And
like myself
office
or Aaron's
like
staff.
Kim and Aaron.
Yeah, mostly it's myself, Aaron's staff, and then some custodians who work 12 months.
Yeah, I mean, I think one, taking care of staff obviously is the priority. Making
life a little simpler, I think, for everybody would be nice, including your office. Aaron would be a goal of mine, I think. And probably combining some of these policies seems to make some sense along those lines to accomplish that. You know, in terms of number, I just don't have it.
I think too, just an important thing for us in terms of my staff, love to make it easier for us to manage, but we don't want to do that at the cost of, I mean, we want to make sure employees are really well taken care of. And we're not sitting here saying, oh, we need to cut anything. We're just showing the difficulty that it is to manage some of the context that we have right now. I think our staff is so far doing an incredible job of figuring out how to manage it. But I mean, there's been lots of complications as we've gone through and done audits where we found based upon a person's contract, they actually were allocated vacation days or they weren't because of the policy and they didn't know that. So they weren't actually accruing vacation days for a year or whatever. And we have to then go back and try to make sure we make that right. And so the biggest goal for us is let's take care of people. I think that's the number one thing from our staff.
So I'm just go next. I know this is a hard conversation to just have, but it sets me up. I can go to CVT and try and come back. I think I'm getting some sense of some areas that are common. I'm just going to go through that list real quick, and I'm going to pause and look at you guys because some of these things you might say, hey, David, I'm not interested in investing a lot of time in that conversation. I want what is a legal requirement, I might say. And I'm not interested in necessarily negotiating that piece. I'd like that to be stripped out. Because there's a couple on here I think you guys do have opinions on, but I want to get that out loud. So military leave, is that something where you want me to put this in the mix of this conversation? Somebody is, say, on the reserves or something like that. Is that something you want me to be investing in wrapping that into this conversation, or you want me to?
I mean, that's all going to be driven by federal law, I would say.
Unless we offer a benefit above,
Mhm.
you know, like
Yeah.
some companies, if you go onto your military leave and the pay is lower than your company pays you, they'll match that difference. So unless we're doing something that's above and beyond.
Do you
I don't
want
see why.
staff input on military leave? Or do you want me to just focus on the law and bring you back recommendations?
I think, like
It's
Jen
currently our
said,
policy is just the law, right? We don't have.
That's my
anything above
understanding,
and
yes, ma'am.
beyond From what I understood reading it, so
Mhm.
Seems pretty cut and dry.
I think it's cut and dry.
Okay, and that's kind of what we'd set up originally, right? To say that wasn't going to be not interested in negotiating that. Legal leave, which is jury duty, right? Somebody goes on jury duty. Is
not
that
much to
something?
negotiate.
I mean, it does seem like so they could get $50 paid to them for being on jury duty. We pay their full salary for the day, so we're actually paying most people more. But then they're giving their $50 back to the district to offset the cost.
And we are never going to be successfully able to manage that. So
I wondered about
if
that.
they do get paid, which that hasn't happened to my understanding, so there's nothing that hasn't been managed. There's nothing to manage. But even if there was, we wouldn't successfully be able to manage it.
Why
Is
would
this-
there be a pay above?
It's a mixture of state law to ensure that people who are doing jury duty and would ensure they get some money. But for our district, that's not relevant because we pay them their per diem.
So we don't pay the normal salary and the district pays $50.
No,
I
they get
misunderstood
paid
that.
$50.
The
And then
judicial
policy
system.
says
Gotcha.
they're supposed to give the $50
No.
to the district.
Which has never occurred, nor do we have capacity to
But
manage
so
that.
that is a policy that needs to be changed then, because if we're not
Yeah.
collecting that $50, then the policy
should get
should
it out
not
of the
say that we're collecting that
Yeah.
$50.
Nor would I really want to do that.
No, I mean, yeah, I feel like they should just get paid their normal salary. I mean, is this really
Most
a
of the
big
time you sit
cost?
there half
Is
the
this
day
a big
and get paid
cost for the district? Like, how many
No.
times are people going on jury duty?
It's not a big cost. We're able to handle it.
Yeah, so I'd say just take out the $50 thing.
But I don't hear anybody saying, yeah, we really want staff input on that one. No.
Although that was one they're arguing to keep, right? Because we do pay above what the law states, and so they want to keep it negotiated so that they don't lose that.
That would be that argument from that side. Yep.
Well, at least it needs to be cleaned up, whether it stays or goes.
Okay. Short-term leave. I'm just going through these to make sure you understand the complications. So short-term leave is anything other than is less than a school week, so 4 days or less. So that would be on top of sick leave bank, on top of personal, on top of sick.
I think this needs to stay in the conversation.
Stay in the conversation.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's just so many, it's so intertwined.
Okay.
So, so if they take the short-term leave, it's only 4 days,
4 days or less.
and it has to be after all the sick time and personal time is used.
No, it could be any time. They could
That's-
they could
I mean,
save
that's
all their
usual in
stuff
companies.
and not use it, and the Board of Education could come before them, and the Board of Education would say, "We're going to give you an extra 3 days off."
And it says with or without pay in the policy.
Right, and the board could say without pay, or the board could say we'll pay you, and the next person who comes up, the board could say we're not going to do that until you've used all your sick leave and personal leave accruals and sick leave bank, and I'm not going to pay you for those 3
Does this
days.
happen a lot?
It's never happened in my time.
So why don't we just make that policy across the board instead of the Board of Education gets to decide that, because I think that's a little.
For me, I don't understand that. I want to make sure that I have an ordinary solution for less than a week of leave for 4 days or less, whether that's personal or sick.
But the board would have to have a special meeting to do that, and I don't think that is the best use of our time. I mean, other institutions, maybe not schools, but other institutions, you take your personal leave or your sick leave, you have to have that all done before you can take a personal leave or the sick leave.
So we're not really.
Sorry, the short-term leave.
We all agreed to remove it
Yep.
when negotiated, but I think it obviously has to be part of the conversation because it's kind of weaved in.
I think that's all tied into leave.
But I think ultimately, if we all agreed to have it removed, I mean, it depends on
Okay.
the final product come back to us.
I mean-
What is an example of short-term leave? Like a scenario hypothetical?
That's never happened in my time. Somebody would say, David, I would like to put in front of the board an action item to request that I get 3 days off,
Paid.
It says paid or unpaid.
paid or unpaid.
Paid or
The Board of Education would decide. You'd never get a recommendation from me to approve any of it because you're going to get some sort of discrimination scenario developed where you say yes to this one and a board 3 years later says no. And
I just don't recognize this from any HR situation. I think.
it is old. And a lot of, but just remember, this is the hard part of leave, is it just keeps gathering, right? Across the years, you get a new problem, you solve that problem, but you don't let go of the old solution for the old problem. And it just gets to keep stacking on top of itself and gets complicated.
That definitely is some discussion and revision.
Okay, I'm gonna keep moving. Maternity, paternity leave. Just I'm gonna name these and see if there's any comments, thoughts on any of this stuff, so that I can take it back to CBT and start to work it.
Have your babies in May.
I think ultimately,
That is an
Well,
option.
it's paternity too, that everybody can.
I think a short-term disability policy for maternity would serve our staff way better.
Yeah.
I think ultimately it'd be great to remove, but you have to intertwine that conversation.
It is intertwined.
Can you get short-term disability policy?
Policy that covers
Yeah.
maternity. Yep.
Okay.
That's what I got when I had my kiddos. with
Some of our
short-term
some of our staff do that, and that's how they successfully get paid for those days they take off. And some of our staff, it's in unequally utilized, that strategy. All right, sabbatical leave. This is one of the why I'm kind of going this. Do you guys want me to engage that one and put that in the mix?
You're on
Sabbatical.
Sabbatical.
By
I don't
putting it in the
think
mix,
so.
you mean put it in the whole discussion of leave policies?
Anybody got firm opinions? Anything to guide me on walking this out?
I feel like we need to really strongly consider if we keep a sabbatical policy at all.
I don't think that it should be part of the leave.
Yeah.
When
I
I'm
think
thinking
it's
leave, I'm
separate.
thinking more the benefits of sick personal days and not necessarily sabbatical.
I would definitely want to have conversations about it though and know what the norm is.
Okay.
I mean, I looked at a number of districts. And a lot of them have sabbatical policies, including Cherry Creek. They don't call it sabbatical, they call it extended professional leave
don't
or
seem
something like that.
Such guarantees.
Yeah, I mean, there's the ones I looked at. Yeah, extended personal leave policy is what Cherry Creek, Aspen has one, Summit, Colorado Springs. I mean, they seem relatively common. So I think it's a benefit for our staff, but I do think the policy needs to be written better. So it's not
Yeah.
setting this board up to be making these mean, at some point it is a decision the board's gonna have to make, but you put some guidelines
Yeah.
that are better manageable, like,
It'd be nice to have a good policy.
we can't grant 5 sabbaticals in 1 year. We probably can, I don't even know if we could grant 2, it might be a stretch, in a small district. So.
The schools you mentioned were a little bit more affluent districts. Did you see any sabbatical policies for lower economic districts?
I can check, but I'm sure there are.
Were
I think
those
it's pretty
sabbatical
common.
policies generally paid or just more of like a long-term leave?
There was paid, half like we do, half the salary.
And some that I looked into also didn't have guarantees.
Some
For
cap
your
the
class
salary. So if
whatever.
if you're at 70,000 or 60, you're the half is capped at 25.
Yeah.
That
It
was
just seems
something
like a
else to
pretty
consider.
common benefit afforded.
I think it's a
people
good
in
I think
education.
it's a good benefit for education.
Yes.
It has to be, so we can make it for educational purposes? Do we make it for, do we set
Soccer
limits
camps?
onto that as well? Does it have to be just for that, for the sabbatical? You mentioned it, so I'm going to jump on that.
Right.
So whatever the answer
But,
is, where we can have
so
a good
those are those things that
policy,
we have to put
that would
in
be
the
great to
policy.
look at.
Like,
Okay, that's helpful.
Well, I
I'm
think
listening.
that's where we need some more guidelines.
Yeah.
So we're not
Yes.
making these sort of ad hoc decisions.
All right, sick leave banking, we got firm opinions. Like, you want me to bring something back? Do you want me to say we're not interested in that solution set?
I mean, you shared a lot of pretty valid concerns, I think. I definitely, there's a piece of me that feels really uncomfortable about the staff making their own individual decisions about who gets approved and who doesn't. And like you said, with HIPAA violations and, having to take something really extremely personal and medical wise to the rest of your peers. I don't know. I think it should definitely, if it stays, obviously be negotiated because they're the ones doing it and dealing with it. But it does seem like it's a lot of concern.
Well, it seems like it would kind of bring up those same concerns that were brought up by staff during professional staff supplementary pay plans and overtime with like the favoritism and the nepotism. And I'm not like saying that's happening, but that seems like something that could be a concern.
so it's going over the policy, and so they had to be a member in SEA to get that benefit. Unless I read that incorrect.
Well, they have to be a member of the bank for sure.
I
They
think,
have to be a
and
member
then
of-
SCA is the one that manages it.
It's the membership. I can't find it now.
Okay.
It went off my
Let
screen.
me see if I can-
I think it's part of the conversation, but if you lit it on fire and brought
So
something else, that'd be
that
great.
one's a little, that one's sketchy to me. Like, it better be- so let's
Okay.
do this.
So it's just membership
I
in the
don't
bank.
remember it's specifying that it was in the bank or membership at SBA.
Gotcha. Bereavement leave.
You
I learned something about bereavement leave. It's not legally required to have bereavement leave, which was rather surprising to me.
Wow.
I read that.
I think it's a great benefit to
Would
keep
like to
in
have
the leave
And that
package.
applies also to child loss. We have something for that, right?
I'd have to reread that policy to see, but I know I would grant
I
it.
think they try to typically define it. What is family?
Father, mother, sister, brother, spouse, partner
mean,
in a
if you
civil
are
union
pregnant
or
and
child.
Mhm.
For example, I'd like to make sure there's.
I think it
Leave
says
for
child.
that.
I think it gets weird if you have cousins and uncles and things.
Oh no, I meant like if you're pregnant
I mean,
and you have a
technically,
loss,
that could get
to make sure there's.
tricky with how you're defining it as child for
Did
the
you catch
policy. So
I
maybe
did.
we
I don't
could
know
add
the answer to
pregnancy
that
loss.
question.
I'd like that to be.
Let's hold on.
We'd want to maximize that, I think.
How does miscarriage fit into that? Okay. Sick leave. And I think we want that, and we want staff input, and we want to have a great policy. Okay. Anybody else thoughts on that one? I don't want to get bogged down too much. Personal leave, again, I feel like you need to have staff input. I feel like we need to have some of them. Perhaps we combine them. The hard part with sick leave and personal leave as teachers is you got to do student supervision, and that's the secret sauce to kids doing as well as we do. So you want those teachers in those classrooms and all the other staff doing their jobs. Professional leave is going to a conference. And then long-term leave is like short-term leave, is just longer than 4 days. So it's on top of all the other ones.
recall that not being a well-written or understandable.
No, nor
policy.
would I ever recommend you ever approve another one of those.
I think a lot of these need to go back to kind of the discussion with CBT, but I don't know if that means that they all come back, that they're still negotiated.
Okay.
Because they're very intertwined, but there's things like the short-term leave potentially they can say, yeah, we can manage that without kind of the staff input. So
I'm afraid we're kind of dumping a bunch of stuff on CBT without much direction. And if they're cool with that, I'm cool with that, but I don't want to turn it into a quagmire for them.
I think it's okay. I think what we're going to do is I'm going to come back and recommend that we look at how do we take care of our ordinary needs and how do we take care of extraordinary needs. And we'll try and put it into some subgroups and we'll try and work that stuff and bring it back to you. I just didn't want that team to start working on something and then discover that you guys were going to have a firm opinion about something, right? So if you guys don't have firm opinions, but you want to see us do better, we will bring better back to you and bring that draft to you guys and get feedback. I just want to make sure I didn't step on any landmines and have people invest a lot of energy so you guys had firm boundaries on something.
Just to go back really quick to the sick leave bank to Carrie to answer your question, there's actually 2 sick leave banks.
Okay.
One is run by SEA, one is run by the superintendent's office. And it has to do with membership, basically.
So it's membership in the SEA.
It's
And
Membership
same
in the
bank.
sick.
So a teacher, for example, is part of the SEA sick bank, but other classified employees are not part of the SEA sick bank. It's a different sick bank. Still something they can take part in, but it's managed by a different.
So there
Run by
are,
the
so,
district.
okay, so
Yeah,
there are
so-
2 different things.
By
So
SEA.
that's
Yeah.
kind of a question in itself then.
Wasn't there a couple recent examples where people that needed help and they had an illness weren't getting it?
Yeah, I can think of one right now in my head, and obviously we always want to be careful about that, but I can think of one right now who is having struggles and the policy is not making it simple to find a way to support them. And it is costing them financially while they also go through their struggle.
So without, getting into specifics, just what policy, you talk about policy wise, what's going on there?
So that person's used, an individual could use their sick, an individual could use their personal, an individual could use what's available to them in the sick leave bank and still have more need, right? Or if that person didn't choose when they got hired to become part of sick leave bank, then once they exhausted their personal and sick, then they wouldn't be able to access that sick leave bank as per policy. Even though if I asked the staff, they'd all give a day to that person and rally around them, right? But they can't because the policy wouldn't let that happen.
Well, and that does just feel terrible that if somebody really is in crisis, that we're relying on all of our other staff having to donate their hours
Yes.
to get them through the crisis.
In no way their responsibility either.
Right.
I would like our staff not to have that concern.
Right.
Like other people have insurance, right?
Mm-hmm. Like a disability. As an
Right, and
example.
like something like cancer, right? We keep bringing that example up. Is our health insurance not generally sufficient to cover when people
No,
are
I've
having
had
medical
staff members,
crises?
and again, I got to be careful here, who are really thankful for how our insurance is helping them through a cancer scenario. And it comes down to what happens when you can't work,
Okay.
right? So there's getting the medical treatment, getting we have a good prescription drug treatment options to help keep those costs down. We have a lot layered into all those insurance coverages, but what happens when you need to keep missing work because you can't come to work and you've exhausted your personal, exhausted your sick?
Which is when potentially, if we could look at like short-term disability stuff, could fill in those gaps then in addition to the medical insurance.
So I'm going to keep us moving. This is how I'm going to go ahead, and you guys tell me if you want to dig deeper and I'm moving it too fast. I'm going to take this back to CBT. I'll take it back to them on Thursday. We're going to try and put a structure around how we can try and tackle this. We're probably going to I'm going to recommend that strategy of how we take care of our ordinary people, ordinary needs, how do we take care of long-term. And it might be easier if we just say, here's how we take care of long-term, and we'll start doing research from like short-term disability, how much will those cost? Because some of that money might be able to gain if we're not paying out these larger amounts. It's going to a few people we might be able to take that money and be able to buy a better benefit for all our staff in an equal way. It's more ubiquitous to everybody. That might be a strategy we explore.
It would just be really nice if everyone can be open to hearing something that might be different, but might be better,
Yeah.
and keep people out of bad situations, knowing that if no one likes it, it doesn't happen, but it would be nice to present it.
Well, we shouldn't have policies where if you're intelligent enough to figure out how to game it, you can. If you can't, you get left out. That's not a good policy.
Or if you're fortunate enough to not have health issues that you
Right.
benefit from.
And you never know when those health issues are going to start.
Right.
You don't know what's going to happen.
Thanks,
Well-
David.
We help you one day, and the next you're like, oh, that's just what happened there. Or like being late, getting in a car crash. I mean, there's a million things that you can do for short-term disability, or even to the long-term disability that you have no control over. And if you don't know how to use the system, that's why you're saying that. Just like you have to say, okay.
Okay. Well, I think you guys do a good job of taking care of your staff, but I think we got to figure out how to manage it better, where it's easier to understand and communicate. Everyone gets the same benefits. Try and do a better job of that, and we have a better way to just encourage people to come to work when it's good, so people don't take advantage of the system and our kids miss out on great teachers. So
I think it's staff, not just teachers.
I agree. Stepping on.
Well, while we have some CBT members still here, does that resonate as something that, like, are we still working together that will be okay in this format? Or, what's your initial take on kind of this discussion, so we can hear it now at least?
Hopefully by next month. No, just kidding.
It's tomorrow.
Oh, well, let's see. Yeah.
End of week.
How many is there out here?
I think if we are able to identify low-hanging fruit, great. But you guys won't even have the information you necessarily need to make informed decisions by Thursday, because there's so much to unweave. So I think there's probably a desire. There's a desire by some of us to have more of it answered sooner than later. But if we're changing the leave policies in a general form, that's not going to happen in 3 months.
I'll just also name for there's gonna be a lot of technical details. It's not where I'm gonna drag the board in. I want to make sure we're remembering the intent of taking care of staff in a manageable way without putting any of our systems at risk. Somehow, once you figure out, I'm gonna lead us into let's find the right solution, and then we're gonna have to walk back. We're gonna go, what do we do for some sort of grandfathering clause, right? What do you do for this person on this side of the line? And wherever we draw the line, someone's gonna have a foot on the other side, and they're gonna draw the short straw. Or get stuck between the new system and the old system, and that's just going to be a reality. We can't. But I think the first thing is let's find the best solution, and then walk it back. And I think the board will have a hard decision to say, this is a better way to do it. Here's how we're going to grandfather it. Here's where we're going to draw the line. And someone is going to come in this boardroom very upset because they're going to be the person with the foot on the other side of that line. And you guys will be in a hard position there to have to take a stand. That's why you guys get paid so much extra money.
And pizza.
And pizza.
I said in pizza.
Oh, in
Get
pizza,
paid
you
for
get
pizza.
We better go have an extra.
All right. Can we go on, boss? Or do you want me to move on to the next one?
Move on to the next one.
All right. Next one. This came back to you we talked about that at our work session from CBT. You'll see the first one's got a staple in it. It says GC, BC, professional staff supplementary pay, plans overtime. This is the one that is negotiated. It is very vague or generic, we'll say. I think CBT is okay with saying we'll give up staff input on that, but they're interested in our stipend policy. So the next, I tried to, it wouldn't do the double-sided. So go to the back side, you'll see the coach's salary on that one. And then the other piece of paper was because I couldn't get the one to photocopy right. So you've got 3 different policies that deal with stipend policy. All right, so we're just bringing it here. We're starting the conversation. Once we started this summer saying after the pandemic we need to dig in. So we've been trying to go through every single one we've assigned. Is there a job description? Did we do all those pieces? Where's the payments? Who's monitoring it? Who's evaluating this person? Like all those key things. Because coming out of the pandemic, we were asking people to do anything sometimes that would keep the doors open that might be outside the contract. Well, as per the parent policy, that means, right, you're asking them to do something outside the contract, so therefore you have to give them some extra money. That's where your stipend comes. The struggle we have in education, just to name this one, because this is where it comes up, is our teaching staff and our administration staff, they're exempt, right? They're not hourly workers. They don't punch a clock. So when you're an exempt employee, you get the job done. That's what you do. If you are and you don't have student supervision, let's say you get the job done 2 hours early and knock off, you still get the same amount of money. Let's say it takes you 2 extra hours on the weekend, you get the same amount of money. Right? You get money for doing the job. That's exempt status effectively. Problem we have is teachers, because this is a teacher issue, because if it's hourly, right, then we have to account for every minute. So we're just talking about our exempt employees, teachers, to hold the main stuff. There's other people in that pot, but use them as the placeholder. When have you asked them to do something beyond their contract? Well, if they're grading on a Sunday night, have you asked them to do something outside the job? No, you have not, right? The problem comes in is every teacher has to punch the clock. They got to be here 7:50 to 4:10, which is the opposite of how you think about that, because you have student supervision, right? You have minors that have to be supervised minute by minute. And so we've tried to help clarify this piece. The stipend policy is the next thing. We have reached out to all of our coaches and all our stipend people and let them know this year that we are doing a deep dive on this topic. So this has already started. For instance, coaching, right? I don't want Marco to come up $50 short to get the perfect coach for our kids. Right? What's that amount that he needs? And let's get that in the salary schedule for coaches. But then how does that work for drama? We've got a choir concert going on right now. So are those activities that you're working with kids? If it's CHASA, it's got its own thing. And then things are dealt with differently. So like football, right? Most of those gates pay for the majority of our uniforms. The football team, the income they generate pays for many of our other coaches and uniforms in that sense. It's an important factor that some people miss. If you go to a drama performance, that gate, right, that stays with the drama team. Whereas you pay the football, or if you go to the basketball game when they're in the state tournament, right, when they're doing that, lots of people coming in, they're paying that gate. That goes into the activities fund and is redistributed out to all the teams. When it comes to a drama performance, that just stays within the drama. And so you have differences. So I can keep going through all the different things. So this isn't necessarily a CBT question. This is a, how do we have a better structure, better policy? I think we also do need to look at our coaching stipends. Is that the right amount of money? I think we're going to have to dig into that and say, do we have enough money on the table to encourage the best coaches in our community to stay involved with kids? I think there's something else we also run into. It's really hard. We take golf, which now has some of the highest participations ever. It's a very different thing. And what's student supervision for the golfers, right? You can't have one adult chasing each golfer around the course. Right, so there's a certain level of supervision, or like our runners. Like some of our runners run a lot faster than coaches. Probably not Coach Kenny, but right. Who runs? But if Coach Kenny's out with the front kids, who's running with the middle kids? Who's running with the end kids? When are they by themselves? So you get these really gray zones that make it hard to say, here's the hard and fast answer. Cross country, right? They're not going to have any gate. Football's going to have a lot of gate. Basketball will have a lot of gate. So then, but football takes a lot of coaches, right? And so then how do you pay that? So another we may switch or may review on that one. Like, okay, football, we're going to give $5,000 to pay for your coaches. I don't care if you hire 5,000 people at $1 each, or one person does it all, right? We might say, rather than trying to figure out, well, this team gets this many assistant coaches at this salary schedule, so that I'm trying to do the back and forth of evaluating. I will tell you, there's not a way you're going to successfully make everyone happy on this one, right? Because this is their most important thing. And if they're going to see how much effort it takes, and every one of our coaches in that sense are giving beyond whatever these amounts are, right? You don't want to run the hourly rate if you're a coach. Correct, coach?
Probably.
So you've got that piece. So you got the parent policy that's negotiated. I think you then have this policy that says the stipend policy, and they might need to be blended. I'll have to check and see. But the way we tried to solve this is you've got supervisory stipends. I'll give you a good example. I've got a teacher at HEA who gave up their prep period every day for the year, and they're teaching the history classes, right? So that is above and beyond their contract during the day, so they're getting extra money to cover that, teach that history class. That's an example of a supervisory stipend. The new tables have wheels. Because there are a lot of legally required moments where we have to have staff supervision. And so this one is, in order to operate, I have to make a staff member. I say, I need you to do this thing extra. So, and since it's a permanent extra, I'm going to pay you a little extra. How do you set that amount? You have to use your best logic. It's got to be a good enough amount to make it worth that person's while, and also have enough equity so that you're not paying that person a lot more. So I'll take summer school, right? Summer school is really hard. Janae and I have to work on this one. It's really hard to set this piece. So we have a policy that says if you do above and beyond like curriculum work, you get $30 an hour. Okay, so if you count all the hours, what about the prep hours? What about the grading? Like, where do you start and stop, and how do you make a predictive amount? It's hard, right? And it's really hard to be uniform, and there is some level of subjectivity because you want to make sure we want summer school. That's a great supervisory stipend we're talking about there. So we operate that piece, and then I have it so that if we can have grant dollars, let's say we have different grant dollars, and I go off of the $30 policy, and I'll say, what is it? How much can we spend in grant dollars? Because we're not using general fund dollars. Just problematizing this thing so you guys get a sense of how broad this is. This is the grease on the wheels that keeps us moving. And when I come to a problem and we don't have that, we're not going to go hire somebody to do an extra hour of work and pay them a livable wage. You do a stipend. If I'm asking somebody to teach an extra 2 weeks in the summer, I'm going to use a stipend. Right. So that's your supervisory stipend. Then you have your CHASA, which is your classic things. It is its own stuff. And it is listed what's in there. So this extra duty stipend is to try and solve that piece.
So that's CHASA?
So this
Says
salary
that's
schedule.
how much they get paid?
This would be their salary schedule. Yep.
Okay, so this is
And it
CHASA
does have
salary,
steps.
Not Slab High School, this is what would be appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So column A has more events, right? Or more participants, or more gate, right? We tried to make a rubric to try and separate out and find as equal as possible and say, these are in this one, these are in this.
So that was my question is, this is set by us, not CHASA.
Correct.
Okay. So what's the CHASA stipend then?
The CHASA stipend is if you're a football coach or,
It has nothing to do with money coming from CHASA.
nope,
Okay.
it's just a different category to try and
Just
separate it from a
okay.
supervisory stipend.
Got it.
And then the third one is locally controlled activity stipends, and the mountain bike team fits in this, right? So we pay the mountain bike coach because we say we want to do that. And we try and place them on this extra duty as an equivalent. So because there are times when we're like, we really want to do this locally. This is important to us. So then we create another stipend to do that. It's not required by law. It's not a CHASA activity. It's just something local we do. those are the three categories we tried to create. And the bottom paragraph is important. This is the only place you'll find this, right? It says if there's a request to add a new locally controlled activity stipend, right? This is that 3-year trial period. This is where you find that paragraph that people are going to say, right, you know, the kid's trying to start a kayak team. Well, keep it together for 3 years and then we'll talk to you. Right? That's where this paragraph falls. So I want to make sure you are aware of where that is. If we're trying to locally add something for kids, so we don't get a flash in the pan, right? And we don't end up with the hacky sack club where we're paying the coach to the hacky sack club forever because we didn't realize what we were doing. That has never happened. So I'm just using that as hyperbole.
Knock it on a hacky sack.
All right. So here's the first question, because this is really a CBT thing. I'm going to start with GC, BC, the one that is negotiated with an N. Do you guys really feel like you want staff input on that policy? GC, BC, professional staff supplementary pay plans overtime. It's the 2 paragraphs. Do you want staff input on that?
Is it just
What input is the staff giving? What the dollar amount is?
It's just
the
these 2
words on the
paragraphs. It's
page?
just the words on the
Gotcha.
page.
Thank
I
you.
mean, ultimately, it's saying we're paying people to do more than their contract
But it
obligations.
doesn't have any connection with this pay.
Correct.
I mean,
Recommending to you that it not be negotiated.
I do not want it negotiated. Because it's, has a voluntary component. They don't have to do that. If it's some club or whatever.
It's
That's
not
why
a-
I wouldn't
yeah,
want it negotiated.
not a situation where you say you have to do this for no pay.
I would agree.
What's this question?
Patient pause.
I mean,
Well,
is it totally
Pregnant pause.
voluntary? Like that first sentence, teachers who are regularly assigned to duties which require extra time or responsibilities over their contractual obligations. That doesn't sound very voluntary.
No, this is a legal reference,
Very long
CRS 2263-2063. This policy doesn't go away, right?
I mean, just historically looking at it, from whether it was negotiated or not, it seems like the more important policy is the stipend policy, which is not negotiated.
And that's what CBT, right.
If you're gonna do the coaches, it says coaches shall be paid as outlined on this policy in the back. I think, and you were saying that if you needed to get a coach for $50 more than what it had on there, would that be doable? Then you'd have to take it to the board, take it to the CBT and all of that. In that particular instance, I do not think it should be negotiated, because if we need to do that to get a high quality coach, I mean, sure, it's not like $50, but that would take a long process and they might decline at that time. If it wasn't maybe tied to the policy of the coach's pay, I would say, you know, in those kinds of things. But as a school, I think there should be fair and equal amounts given to each coach or assistant coach, however that they do that. And that should be dictated by the school, not necessarily by other people. Wanting to, you know what I mean, like wanting to, like more administrative, because I'm sure everybody would want to get paid more for the job that they do. You see how that could get increased
Totally. So
or less.
I'm going to recommend that none of these be negotiated. I'm going to take the first one is the one that's negotiated. My recommendation would be you wouldn't seek input. I don't think that's necessary. It's law. You have to do those pieces. But know that the law is unclear when it comes to the teaching world, because it's exempt versus I got to be there when the kids are there, right? This push and pull stuck in our industry is always a struggle. We don't punch a clock as teachers, and yet you better be here at 7:50 because you got to watch bus duty. Right? It's just a problem we're always going to struggle with. The other one, I'd be interested in staff input, but here's why I wouldn't. I'm struggling with, we mentioned the Early Childhood Center not being able to solve our special ed needs, right? So now I'm creating a stipend. That's the solution that was brought to me this week to try and pay somebody to give a little bit extra to take care of these special ed needs, right? Give up your prep time effectively. I'm going to create that right now. If it's good, then I'm going to bring it in front of you and get it going. Right? Because we got kids right now that need supervisory. It's possible you could write this so that I could still make that happen. Or would I have to bring every time I want to create a stipend? Do I have to bring that back to CBT? That would never be possible to successfully manage, right? Or if I realize summer school, I need to put another $100 on the table to make it happen, but I have to come back to the CBT, right? So, I mean, if everybody said you wanted staff input, then we'd have to be carefully write that policy so we have the flexibility for, myself to solve a problem in the middle of the year when we're asking somebody to do something extra. And at that point, that's the piece where a staff member is going to want to say, right? Because you're talking about compensation at that point. And there's no way to successfully grease the wheels and keep these little things going in the district. So that's, try and let that. I think other boards, I'm not sure about here, so I'm just talking in general. On the coaching things, boards have found they've had to hold that close because that becomes very contentious among staff of I'm an academic person, I'm more of the coach person, right? And some people feel like it's an inequity because that coach is getting a little extra something else. And it can become more poignant when that coach is out all spring on a regular basis getting a substitute because they're always going athletic events, right? So, I mean, it can become a more poignant difficulty among staff. So some boards have said, we are not going to put that in front of our staff because I don't want to exacerbate that struggle among their staff. And some boards, I'm sure, have done the opposite.
Well, and then you also have, so many coaches in this district who are going above and beyond, right? And running summer training all summer that they're not getting paid for.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
So
any coach is running off-season.
Yeah, all
stuff.
of our coaches are doing so much more than their actual season.
And we know that with participation and success of a program on the mentoring side, it's always better to have one of our staff members doing that. We always have far more success, particularly because they're just tied into the same life cycle of things.
Is there? It seems like some coaching jobs are harder than others.
Mm-hmm.
Like a swim coach,
Mm-hmm.
they have to get up horribly early, but they're staying in a nice, warm area.
Right.
Football coaches might be doing 2 days, and then in the fall, they're out there in some pretty miserable weather. So it's kind of hard to quantify.
Very hard.
And I personally wouldn't ride in a school bus down the river canyon for $1,000. That would be horrible. And
It's not that bad. It's not fun, but it's not bad.
oh no,
I think, that's a real benefit. So I think the key question I'm asking in this is the bargaining team has said they see the value in letting go of this negotiated policy here, but they're asking that question of, am I giving up some right to control a benefit for my staff? I don't think they are, but I think they're asking a valid question of should their voice be in here? And that would be something where you guys like David, we really feel like we want you to extend that into that space. I personally don't see that as the best option, but I can see the argument.
I think if Jody were here, she would say this allows you to be nimble. And that seems very important in times
Yes.
such as this.
I also, basically the negotiated policy says, we're going to pay you for extra time.
Mhm.
I would have no problem keeping that being a negotiated policy. That's,
Okay.
that doesn't seem like,
Yeah, because the regulation piece of it is what
Yeah.
gets
Well, and
in
if you're
trouble.
saying this is the law, then I'm
Right.
not sure what anyone's going to really be able to change,
I don't
right?
think we'd
Whether
ever
it's
end up
negotiated
discussing
or
it.
not
there's
negotiated.
not much to negotiate is my
Right,
point.
right.
So I'm not going to die.
So
on the
why
hill
die
of
on that hill?
taking it out?
So
it's just
David, was
a
that-
time frame thing, right? Of trying to get things moving. But is that a common?
But this
problem?
doesn't make that. That's
This
the
is
actual
negotiated
stipends,
policy.
right?
This
that
is
are-
the piece that's not.
But David, were you saying with the ECE right now, this would cause a problem for you?
If you, depending how you wrote it, right, would I have to take any change in any compensation for any staff member back, like I would for a salary schedule, back to CBT in order to resolve early childhood special ed teacher need? Then if you wrote it that way, then we couldn't keep the wheels greased and we'd run into major
Yeah, I mean,
problems.
it seems like we
But
can't put ourselves
This
in that
doesn't say
situation.
that. That
No,
would
it
just be if we made this negotiate,
Mhm.
right?
So if you came back and said, hey, David, after discussion, these would be the things I might expect from you. Just keep it the way it is. Keep the negotiated there. We're fine with that. Don't add negotiated to the other one. And thank you very much for starting the process of reviewing this. We're excited to hear what you find and how you're going to resolve some of these issues. That might be one thing I'm trying to listen and guess that that's what you're saying.
I would agree with Matt. I don't think it's worth, I don't think it needs to be negotiated, this GCBC, but it doesn't have a whole lot in it. So if it stays negotiated, let's make sure we timestamp that we talked about it in 2023, and 10 years from now, somebody else can say, maybe we should timestamp that policy, because nobody's going to really debate this one, I have a feeling.
Okay. Others?
Well, it goes to that whole nepotism and favoritism thing again.
But
I mean,
not,
if we're talking
but
about some
not
of the other
this actual policy.
But it says regarding pay, so depending on how you find, if you find somebody that's like, I am super excited about drama, I think they should get paid more.
But that's this policy.
It's not that policy. It is a policy that says, of this coaching part right here, coaches shall be paid stipend is outlined in this policy.
Oh, okay. Just that last.
But if you find that somebody's like, oh, well, you know what, I'm a huge fan, my lifelong love of golf, I think they should get paid $10,000 to do it because, you know, they have to walk around 18 holes, which they don't. You know, they get in their little golf carts and drive around. Or football, they're outside, cross country, track, they're
Yep.
running with them. Is it based on athletic ability? Is it, you know, is it based on how many participants they have? There can be so many different ways to put that in, but I think that it should be an across the board, and the more hands that are in it to negotiate it, I think that's detrimental to, I think it can't end up being the favoritism. I think it can be nepotism, especially if you know people in
Yeah.
that situation.
I honestly hadn't
Like,
even seen that.
Or you can
sentence,
pull
so.
people in like, oh, I think you'd be a great assistant coach. You know what, they pay you this amount. Or as opposed to going over somebody else that may be more qualified or something like that. But if we have it, this is how we're getting paid, or you can ask for some extra money, you know, or something like that, you know, go across. I think that you set the boundaries, you make them fair and equitable for everyone, boys, girls, or men and women. However you make that, but it needs to be equitable across the board because, as we know, women don't get paid as much as men. There can be in that position, depending on who you're looking at and who you're talking to. I just want to make sure that it is equitable and there's a basis for the equity.
Either way, you're going to get to make the decision on all that stuff that you just brought up. It's a board
It's going to be in
policy.
October or is it be November?
No.
You.
The board member sitting in that chair, whomever they might be at that time. So what I hear you saying is on number 23, GCBC-N, that I would keep it negotiated, and the other one would stay unnegotiated, and I need to come back to you guys with clarity on how to keep on making this better.
I think we as a board need to fix our stipend policy and review our stipend amounts and keeping that out of negotiations so that we can make sure we are appropriately acting is a good thing. If GCBC is not negotiated or is negotiated, toss up.
But is Carrie's concern about that last sentence pertinent, that handicaps you a little bit with doing the salary schedule?
It does not.
No.
No, it just says clearly how they talk to one another.
And I do think we do need to have a stipend schedule. Like it can't be that we just decide to pay this coach more. right? Like
Right.
there has to be
Yeah.
more.
There's got to be that
attributed.
exhibit there.
Yeah.
All right.
I think it needs to be looked at.
Okay. Yep. And we're already in the middle.
Yeah.
All right. I think I heard you guys. I'm going to try and walk that out and bring it back as action items as needed.
5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes. Break.
Well, this stuff's all fast.
It
Yeah.
should go.
Honestly, all of this, approve accreditation, priorities, transfer, like none of that is gonna.
There's someone mentioned like we get over the day. But really not involved with stuff.
Yeah.
That's good.
And my BOCES meeting's tomorrow, so I have nothing to tell you. And I haven't even read the packet yet, so.
Ellen, I don't care. I don't care if you're driving or not. That bus ride sucks.
She gets after the coaches. You got to be careful. Oh, he's going swim to I will. The giant bus, I get sick. This is not working well for you, but just concede and forget.
I just send my kid with a plastic bag and he throws up into it and then throws it away.
I'm waiting for this one.
It's all good. That's
I think what upsets me the most is like, when I did it, it's like you be driving back on the bus with like 3 kids.
Right.
And like you're like, why couldn't somebody drive me home?
Right. It's not a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
One time I drove though, and like I was working, and then I was like midway through the first quarter of my shift. Okay. It was nice to drive home by myself.
Yeah, someone usually tries to ride home with me because it's assistant coach because they're
Acceptable.
3 kids.
You think you can run a business with a highlighter shirt? Yes.
Well, I was told to be here for this. Do you guys have questions?
We approved that before discussions.
Well, thank you for staying.
Yeah, you could have left before the last break.
I love how you try to get everybody going too.
Well, he's the one that commented. He needs to come right above. Yeah, I'll pay you. I'll pay you $22 an hour. Drive it.
Oh, look at that.
That's my point is, they were like, well, they don't have to teach classes, they're getting off and get to go coaching somewhere. And in my mind, I would rather teach class than.
Half the time these coaches are laying across the seat and the seat's coaching. They're running the all over the bus. If you're in the driver's seat, you
It's all on this. It's not.
Probably not.
you have pants, you have stuff, you have rubber.
Mike is on. Kim, take your time. Don't worry about it.
We're on number
All right. Action items.
5.
We are looking for a motion to accept accreditation schools as recommended by the state of Colorado.
So moved.
Thank you, Matt.
Second.
Thank you, Jen. David, you want to touch on this real quick?
All your schools are performance, top of the state.
That's it.
I spent the earlier part already praising it.
And did I hear we may challenge for distinction potentially?
We may challenge for distinction. We're the only school you don't have the school performance framework around is your AEC, your alternative education campus, which is HEA. They still don't have that work done. I've been working with the director of that department. So it'll probably be next month. I'll have something there. We're at 18th, and it's 2 students' data that's keeping us out of distinction. So there may be a way for me to look at the data differently and change that accreditation.
That'd be great, but well done. Ready for a vote. You're good.
Dr. Hill,
Aye.
Mr. Hobbs,
Aye.
Mrs. Maddox, Mrs. Pascal, Ms. Schickman, and Mr. Smith.
Aye. Okay, looking for a motion to approve the 23-24 strategic priorities.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Carrie.
I'll second.
Thanks, Mandy. Any questions or comments? I think we've outlined this pretty well and discussed it the last few meetings, so formally approving them.
Is that something we should do out loud, just so people know what they are, or are they going to be posted somewhere?
They'll be posted on our strategic plan website, that part of our website.
I think the other piece we've talked about is a lot of all the policy stuff, all of the facility stuff, and obviously finances and just day-to-day operations. So, but it'll be out there. We ready for a vote?
All right. Dr. Hill,
Aye.
Mr. Hobbs,
Aye.
Mrs. Maddox, Mrs. Pascal, Ms. Schickman, and Mr. Smith.
Okay, looking for a motion to approve resolution 2023-24-02, transfer interest income from Fund 10 to Fund 43 at the end of the fiscal year.
So moved.
Second.
I may have missed seeing this resolution.
I'm wondering if with all of the policy stuff,
I assume it's properly worded. I just didn't know if we were planning to transfer all, if we were going to transfer a portion to let it absorb. some of the
Transfer
interest
resolution is
costs.
$125,000 of interest income based off what we have. We saw more interest income last fiscal year than we will this year because of the change in funding and not having state equalization dollars. So we'll be earning less in that. We also, so you're aware, we also learned yesterday in the county meeting, they may even be that nobody has any idea if HH passes and what that could do to try and get the paperwork done, but it could delay our payment of taxes to the district an extra month, which will hit our cash flow. Again, drain all our cash down trying to make payroll, which will reduce your interest income if it's not in the bank earning interest. So $125,000 is what the resolution is.
Is it more appropriate to name it as a percentage versus the dollar amount, or?
That's how it was written.
I personally would prefer it to be a percentage of the total, but
What would you like it to be?
well, I think that's the question if we went the percentage route versus a dollar amount route. I think I saw one board member wanting to be closer to 50%. I am personally closer to 75 or 80%. Don't know if anybody else has thoughts. Is 125 hope for the entire amount, or is that just the swag?
50% of last year's. So if you wrote it as a percentage, that's easier to be flexible. So it makes a lot of sense.
Is it better to table because it's kind of up in the air versus, and it's not like we have to do it immediately?
And it's something that gets done at the end of the fiscal year.
Yeah, it'd be an end of year transfer, so it would happen basically when we did all the budget meetings and stuff like that. So yeah, we have time on it.
In December.
If there's any confusion, we can table it till next month.
Yeah.
You need a motion for that.
And Matt, maybe initial motion, so he gets to, right? Matt?
Need a motion to table it?
Yep.
So, motion to table that.
Till the October meeting,
I'm getting a little bit weird.
October 10th.
Sorry.
Nice job.
Okay.
Past my bedtime.
Was that Mandy that seconded?
I'll second.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I would love to come back with just, I say 75%.
We will bring something back to you.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Looking for a motion to approve first reading policy BG, clarifying subordination of regulation and exhibits.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Good. Any discussion or comments on that one?
Our lawyer again today was reviewing that one as I asked, and had more questions of why we do things the way we do. She thought there was simpler ways to go through readings, and so in the second reading, I'll probably bring the lawyer's recommendation, including this one sentence around being clear that exhibits can't change policies.
Beautiful.
But this first reading gets you moving, and it's in action items because it was part of that CBT recommendation.
All right, ready?
Yep.
Dr. Hill,
Aye.
Mr. Hobbs,
Aye.
Mrs. Maddox,
Aye.
Mrs. Pascal,
Aye.
Ms. Schickman,
Aye.
and Mr. Smith.
Okay, looking for a motion to approve first reading to remove negotiated status from the following various policies after reviewing CBT's August recommendation.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Mandy? I don't know if there's anything more needs to be said about these ones. Beautiful. Ready for a
All
vote?
right, Dr. Hill,
Aye.
Mr. Hobbs,
Aye.
Mrs. Maddox,
Aye.
Mrs. Pascal,
Aye.
Ms. Schickman,
Aye.
and Mr. Smith.
All right. Looking for a motion to revoke first reading on these various policies listed. I think this is off of CBT recommendation as well.
It is.
So looking for a motion.
So move.
Thank you, Ben.
Second.
That's good. Any more additional questions, comments on these?
All right, Dr. Hill,
Aye.
Mr. Hobbs,
Aye.
Mrs. Maddox,
Aye.
Mrs. Pascal,
Aye.
Ms. Schickman,
Aye.
and Mr. Smith.
Okay, looking motion, approve second reading of these various policies listed below.
So moved.
Wait, who was my motion? Sorry.
Jen.
Jen, thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
Any questions, clarifiers, comments on these? Okay,
All right. Dr. Hill,
Aye.
Mr. Hobbs,
Aye.
Mrs. Maddox,
Aye.
Mrs. Pascal,
Aye.
Ms. Schickman,
Aye.
and Mr. Smith.
aye. Beautiful. Moving into Board Communications Committee. Mandy, anything for BOCES?
We have a meeting tomorrow. Susan Udenberg seems like she's doing a great job. She's sending out lots of communication, but I honestly haven't read the board packet yet.
I did review that. I did accept being the chairman of the Superintendent's Council for that for this next year. So I'm working a lot with Sudenberg. I think it'll be a bigger question as we go through that. A lot of other boards are having a lot of changes, unlike ours. So it could be a large change where Mandy's the only person who's done it before. And so when you come back around to changing anything after the election, I'm going to recommend that Mandy stay on BOCES so we make sure we have some continuity on that team.
Okay, thank you.
Fabulous.
Facilities, Carrie, I don't have anything.
No.
Talk.
I think we're just keep moving forward and some of the other ideas that we have.
A lot of the work is in David's hands right now.
Right.
Communications, Jen, Matt.
Pass.
I mean, we had a weird meeting we had at
The
Margarita.
listening session.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if that's necessarily communications, but we did have a community meetup, and one person attended, gave us some input on staff pay was one of the items we discussed. I can't remember what else was a hot issue, but there was only one person there. Not super well attended, but better than zero. And I think there's nothing else to good to have to. Maybe we need to make them around certain topics. I don't know, but anyway.
I would like to continue doing.
Yeah, I would like to continue doing that.
If we set certain topics, we probably.
In a general sense, do we have a time frame of the next start newsletter paper thing?
I was thinking about that today. And I think December, it's one of those, it's always a tricky time. And there's reasons to push it back a month, and we will meet and decide.
And website update?
Coming along. The big blocks of I feel like all kind of come into place, and now it's just filling in the gaps in those blocks. And just standardizing across all the schools so they're the same. So as a parent, your kiddo starts in ECC, and then where to find. Good example.
School supply list.
School supply list, and it's the same in each building, right? So you can just kind of know where you're looking, no matter what school your kids are in. So big blocks are all in place, filling in the gaps with school staff.
I'm not saying it's an issue, but I know it can be of making sure the app links to the website appropriately when things are all done.
And I know to that point, though, we've had some issues with our Apple app this week, but that should be resolved. So anyone that was trying to download the Apple version of our app, let me know if it's not working, but it should be fixed.
CASB. Jen, anything there?
Sure. CASB is updating their bylaws. They'll be presented in October, and we can vote on them in December. I don't feel particularly strong about a need to read or vote on those personally. They also said that with their help, the School Finance Act passed, which included an $880 million buy down of the BS factor, which seems cool.
Say the number again, sorry.
$180 million. And they said that the legislature intends to buy the whole thing down by next year. I'm going to go with probably not. And then they said that the PPR is set at 8,076.41, which is an 8% increase over 22-23. I don't know if David obviously already has this information and knows if it's accurate. And they said that leaves us at about 40th in the nation. Also not something I verified, but that's where we are.
Better than it was.
Yep. And they said they're trying to work more closely with the Rural Alliance, which I support, as that group seems a little more pertinent to us.
And then remember December 7th, I believe it starts through the 9th-ish for the conference. So all of us have rooms, and we will make sure we allocate nights appropriately as we get closer.
Yeah, no, I will follow up with, just to confirm dates and travel as we get closer.
I don't really think we have an election update because we canceled the election.
Do you want me to give a final?
Yes, please.
So because we had 5 seats that were up for election this year, we had 4 candidates that submitted petitions that were valid candidates, and then for the 5th seat we had a single write-in candidate. And so we met on Friday just to officially cancel the election because there were no contested seats. So that was taken care of. All the kind of follow-up paperwork, communication with the clerks, posted on the website, all those things have been wrapped up at this point. So it'll also get published in the paper. And that takes care of our election items. Just a note, Carrie will continue to serve in her seat one more month, and then we will through November, and then at the November meeting we will officially swear in all those folks.
Where will it be published in the paper?
In the legal notices section.
The really little parts?
What was that?
The little print in the back?
And I will also finish a press release to that point as well. But yes, the legal notice section covers us as well as posting it on the website. Yes, I'll share more details with the community. And I'm always available to answer questions.
Did anyone, like the reporters came to that meeting, did anyone see any articles? I didn't see.
I was looking.
There was one in
Tomorrow's
New York,
paper, though.
There was one in New York.
Yeah. Oh, I saw like a headline. But
I was
didn't see
saying
the
make
article.
it Fridays.
Mountaindale.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know what their deadlines are. So it's a Friday. Is tomorrow Tuesday, Friday paper? Or today's paper? I haven't seen.
That would be today's paper, right?
Great job on another election.
Yes. Stellar work.
Did you have something?
Did. Are we done with that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Before we go into future business, I just want to
Why are you always doing that? Just-
take it.
No, go ahead.
No, you got it.
No, go ahead.
It's yours.
You're ready. Go.
I don't know what that
Making me nervous.
Go for it. Use your input.
Before we leave, this is William's last board meeting. Next time we meet, William will be in Mexico and no longer in America. And William has given us decades of his life and work, and we are in a better space because of his stuff. I'm just deeply thankful to get to work with him for the last 12 years. So thank you, William.
Thank you. Take some extra tiramisu to go if there's any left.
You could probably even take a whole pizza.
Yeah.
is.
Okay. Future business. I think we have our schedule lined out pretty well. We know it's going to be a lot of different things. Calendar of events. Next meeting will be October 10th. Here again, agenda review. Who would like to jump on that one?
I haven't done it in a while.
Okay, we'll do that. We'll connect the first week there.
And we don't anticipate any work session that day.
None
don't.
identified at this time.
And then acknowledging all the various recent events. I thought they were well attended. Different things like Aaron alluded to, CNC's luncheon did give some updates on Prop HH as well as get a little FaceTime with their board. So I was appreciative that CMC came down and spent a few days in the community. So, and then from everything I've heard, the safety night was well attended and went pretty well overall. So, with all of that, looking for a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Carrie. 9:15. Action took 10 minutes.